Welcome to the Friday night lock-in. Delighted that we're here again this Friday. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome everybody to a fantastic night we have ahead tonight. I'm really excited about what we're going to do this evening. Please let me know where you are joining us from, what's in your glass. I'd love to know. Tonight is a big night. We are going to be going on a East Coast crawl, because it is halfway to St. Patrick's Day, and that means it's 6 months since we first started this live stream. We started it around St. Patrick's Day in 2020, which is this year, and it means we're 6 months away from next St. Patrick's Day, which hopefully means we won't be, hopefully we won't be as quarantined or as isolated or as shut down as a world in 6 months' time. But in any case, tonight we celebrate getting closer and closer to St. Patrick's Day. So I'm really excited that we are going to be sipping on Clonakilty whiskies all evening as we work our way up and down the East Coast, in and out of pubs and restaurants and all kinds of unusual buildings, some on wheels, some not. You'll have to just stay tuned and see exactly what I mean. So it's going to be a really fun night tonight. Music, as always, some special musical guests, 2 different musical guests tonight, and I'm not counting myself as one of them. But I would love for you all to hang in there as long and as late as you can, because we're going to have some fun tonight. The crack is going to be mighty. We have a packed schedule, an absolute packed schedule for you. And it's going to be so much fun figuring out how we move between each of our fantastic guests tonight and how we make sure that everybody is in the right place at the right time. But I think it's going to be a lot of crack. So let me know where you are and what you're drinking. Dana is drinking some Powers in Dublin, Ohio. The Mossy Muse is in South Florida drinking Clonakilty. Great stuff. Kieran's got his Clonakilty Bordeaux cask ready in his Stories and Sips glass. Sláinte Kieran, good man. I've got my Stories and Sips glass ready here. I've got 5 or 6 of them ready here for all of the whiskies that we're going to be drinking tonight. Paul Andrews got his Clonakilty port cask finish as well. Great stuff. So great to see so many familiar faces. Gary is still driving, so nothing in his glass. That's a wise move there, Gary. Choose one of those things. So Gary, pour something good in there when you get home, maybe if you've got a drop of Clonakilty. And Peter is locked down in Dublin. Of course, Dublin 3 minutes ago, locked down in Ireland. Sadly, pubs and restaurants cannot serve as of 3 minutes ago. No indoor dining, which is sad news for everyone in Ireland. So fingers crossed that that changes very, very soon. Eric Waite is in California drinking Connemara cask strength. Yeah, can't get enough of the smoke. If the smoke outside doesn't get you, the smoke in the glass will. Good man, Eric. And Chris is down in Florida drinking, or in Fort Myers, yeah. Fort Myers in Florida drinking some Clonakilty as well. Fantastic. Nick Valley, you've got some Yellow Spot. All right, we've got whiskies from the island of Ireland, people drinking whiskies from all over this evening. That's fantastic. Great to see so many of you joining in. Over the next 8 or 9 hours, next 2 or 3 hours, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to shoot over to Ireland. Then we're going to come back to the United States. We're going to drink our way up and down, and we're going to have some crack. When we started this live stream 6 months ago, it was to bring people together. It was to try and create some kind of online community when the in-person community wasn't possible. We never thought 6 months later we'd still be doing it. We didn't think it would last this long. Sadly, for many communities, it's going to last a lot longer. The good news is we're going to keep coming here on a Friday night, drinking great whiskies, telling some stories, sipping on new whiskies, old whiskies, meeting interesting people in the world of Irish whiskey. So before we go to Ireland for one of our guests tonight, I want to kick things off tonight with a musical guest, because I think that a lock-in deserves music as much as it deserves whiskey. So before I do that, I'm going to pour a drop of, what will I pour? I'm going to pour some Clonakilty single grain Bordeaux cask finish into my glass, because I can't listen to a bit of music without a drop of whiskey in my glass. So Dahi is in Andalusia with Clonakilty in the Tua glass. Fantastic. Great stuff. Great stuff altogether. So without further ado, as I sip on a drop and say sláinte to you, let's bring in our first musical guest. And bear with me. Patrick Marin, how are you, sir?
Doing all right. How are you, sir?
Doing great, doing great. Welcome to the show. We have big plans for you tonight. You're going to be joining us on multiple occasions tonight, whether you like it or not.
I think I'm up to the challenge.
You're up to the challenge. You're a man with a better microphone and earphone setup than even the host himself.
Well, that's just a matter of discussion. Shall I kick us off with a tune about whiskey?
Please, tell us what you're going to sing.
Just going for some classic Irish folk music for halfway to St. Patrick's Day. So we're starting off with the rare old Mountain Dew.
Fantastic.
Let the grasses grow and a water flow in a free and easy way, but give them enough of the rare old stuff that's made near Galway Bay. And policemen all from Donegal, from Sligo and Leitrim too, we'll give them a slip and we'll take a sip from the rare old Mountain Dew. Idle diddly idle dum diddly doodle idle dum diddly doo right diddly I day. Idle diddly idle dum diddly doodle idle dum diddly doo right diddly I day. At the foot of the hill, there's a neat little still where the smoke curls up to the sky. By the smoke and the smell, you can plainly tell there's poteen brewing nearby. And it fills the air with odor rare, and betwixt both me and you, when home you stroll, you can take a bowl or a bucket of the Mountain Dew. Idle diddly idle dum diddly doodle idle dum diddly doo right diddly I day. Idle diddly idle dum diddly doodle idle dum diddly doo right diddly I day. Now learned men who use the pen have spoke their praises high of the sweet poteen from Ireland's green distilled from wheat and rye. It'll cure all ills, be you pagan, a Christian, or Jew. So take off your coat and grease your throat with a rare old Mountain Dew. Idle diddle idle dum diddly doodle idle dum diddly doo right diddly I day. Idle diddle idle dum diddly doodle idle dum diddly doo right diddly I day.
Foot tapping has already started. We're off to a musical start. No better way to start a night of whiskey than a few songs to get us going. That's good. That's the rare old, what's that one called again?
The rare old Mountain Dew, as I learned it by the Dubliners.
Fair play to you. Patrick, thanks a million for kicking us off. Paul says, you're making it look easy. Dane is already pumped.
Too kind.
Kieran says, lovely start. All right, give Patrick a round of applause in the comments, folks, if you enjoyed our first song of the night. There's many more to come over the course of the evening. And Patrick, we will be back to you in a little bit of time. So get those vocal cords going and rested maybe. Drink a bit of whiskey. We are, thanks very much for joining us there, Patrick. We will be coming back to Patrick at multiple times this evening. Patrick wears many hats in the world of whiskey and music. And so that's going to be it's going to be a good old time tonight with Patrick. So before we work our way up and down the East Coast and before we go over to Ireland, I want to let you know that tonight is all about Clonakilty whiskey. And Clonakilty is a beautiful little town in the west of Cork, probably about 45 minutes drive from where I grew up. A town that for many years was known for its black pudding more than anything else, and I think whiskey is giving it a run for its money now. So the Clonakilty Distillery, which is a new distillery, opened up very recently, but quickly making a mark for themselves, is a wonderful distillery right in the heart of Clonakilty town. And we are going to experience Clonakilty whiskies tonight. We're going to hear stories from people from Clonakilty. We're going to go to Clonakilty in a little bit and have a chat with the head distiller, Paul, about their new make spirit. But before we do that, Clonakilty have been kind enough to give us some swag, some things to give away to our trusty audience here tonight. So there's two swag bags up for grabs. Let me show you a picture of some of the things that are included in the swag bag. So we have these wonderful t-shirts, these Clonakilty t-shirts with the whale tail there on the front. How you can win this as well as a bunch of other items in a swag bag. We've got two of them to give away, one male and one female. Why? Because there are female t-shirts, t-shirts for women and t-shirts for men. So this is two prizes up for grabs, one for women and one for men. The swag bag contains t-shirts, a hat, a hip flask, 2 glasses, and Clonakilty coasters. How you can win that is if you have Clonakilty whiskey in front of you. And if you have Clonakilty whiskey in front of you, all I'm asking you to do is to take a picture of the Clonakilty whiskey in front of the live stream on your phone or your computer or your tablet or wherever you're showing it, or on your cinema screen or the movie theatre that you've rented out to watch the live stream tonight. Take a picture of that and share it in the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group. So take a picture of your Clonakilty in front of the live stream, share it in the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group, and in the next 48 hours, we'll choose 2 winners, 1 male, 1 female, so that the swag bags are appropriately fitting. So that is an easy way to be in with a chance to win a wonderful swag bag from Clonakilty. All right then, without further ado, I am going to take us from the United States all the way over to Cork. And let me do this. Paul Corbett, all the way from Cork. How are you, sir?
Hi, Barry. Good evening or good night, depending where in the world you are right now.
We're keeping Paul out of bed because it's past midnight in Ireland, when that's the witching hour. You should be fast asleep by now, but you've had a long day, but you're still at it.
Yeah, I haven't seen 1:15 midnight on a Friday in too many moons.
Paul is the head distiller at Clonakilty Distillery, and he's proudly wearing a Cork t-shirt, a Cork hurling, GA hurling t-shirt. Look at this. Look, he's arrived to fly the Cork flag.
Pure Cork.
Pure Cork. You were very disappointed to see I wasn't wearing one when you arrived on earlier.
Well, I'm pretty sure you mentioned earlier in the week you were going to be, and now you're leaving me hanging here on my own.
I thought you could fly the flag yourself. No better man.
No fear.
Sure, I'd have to wear a half American flag, half kind of Cork thing at this stage. I've been over here so long, you know. You're the authentic Cork man over there now.
I'm sure we can get one made up for you.
You probably could. Paul, how long have you been at Clonakilty?
I'm just coming up on about 2.5 years now.
And for our audience that's not familiar with what Clonakilty Distillery is producing, what are the styles of whiskey that you're producing at the distillery?
So at the distillery, we're focusing on distilling pot still spirits. So a percentage of raw barley and malted barley.
When did the distillery start distilling the pot still whiskey?
So we would have started distilling, would have been March 2019. I think we filled our first cask 1st of May 2019.
And the goal to always make pot still spirit at the distillery. Is that the focus of what you're going to make going forward?
I'd say the focus will be pot still, but also do like small runs of some specialty malts or single malt. Okay.
So I got this little package in the post this week that included a little bottle that doesn't resemble by colour any kind of whiskey that most people will be familiar with, because it's not yet whiskey. What we have here is your new make spirit that comes out of the third still. You've won awards for your new make spirit already. People are raving about the quality of the new make spirit. That's help people understand what's a new make spirit as opposed to whiskey.
So new make spirit is it's what comes off your spirit still, really. It's whiskey before it goes into the cask. You could call it a pachine, really. So it is the raw spirit. It doesn't have any of the wood flavors yet. It's completely clear as all the color comes from the casks. So it's really a concentration of the grain and the flavors from the yeast.
Now, are you making one recipe? Do you have one recipe for how you make pot still, or do you vary the recipes, the mash bills for what goes into your pot still whiskies?
No, I usually do I do a 60% raw barley, 40% malt, and then I do the exact opposite. I'll use 60% malt, 40% barley, and they produce two very different spirits. So when you're using the 60% raw barley, you'll get a heavier, more grain-focused spirit, and when you're using 60% malted barley, you'll get a lighter on the palate, more fruity style pot still. So I do these in 3 to 4 years when we're going to release a whiskey, we'll have some blendability where I can make, if I want a really heavy, thick pot still, I'll use the higher proportion of the 60% malt, and if I want to bring more of those fruits, I'll use the lighter 40% raw barley spirit.
So the raw new make spirit that comes out is your first chance at evaluating how good or how likely that spirit is to be a good whiskey, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think since we won the Best New Make Award last year, we can be pretty confident if we put that good spirit into some good wood, we're going to get some good whiskey.
So what I have here is, I think I have the winning formula that was that won the award. I've got the 60% malted, 40% unmalted. Is that the winning recipe?
That's what won, last year.
So I'm gonna have a little sip of this. Do you have any pot still? Do you have any pot still new make yourself?
I do. I have a glass here. I actually have the exact opposite one of you. I have the 60% raw barley, 40% malt.
So what are you looking for when the new make spirit comes off? I mean, by the time it gets to that final stage, you've analysed and tested it at a couple of stages along the way, haven't you?
Yeah, so our spirit still would have no metering on it. There's no flow meters, no ABV, anything like that. All the cuts on our spirit still are manual. So every cut is done by the distiller who's there at the time, tasting, nosing the spirit, and then he'll make the cut. So every spirit cut is slightly different. From experience, the distillers will know the kind of the rough volume, the rough ABV, but really it comes down to nosing and tasting every time, because every fermentation is going to be slightly different. Each batch of grain you get is going to be slightly different. So every batch we run through is bespoke.
Now you're growing, there's barley growing on the Scully family fields, Galley Head, and you're using that in the new make, or a portion of that, or that's contributing towards the amount of grain you're using in the new make spirit, is it?
Yeah, our entire raw barley proportion would be coming from out the Galley Head, so grown all around our warehouse.
So what do you look for when you're at the spirit safe and you're nosing that spirit for the first time? What tells you that it's good, bad, or indifferent?
So when I'm nosing it, I'm really looking for the fruity notes coming through. Is there a cereal note? The oils on the glass. When I can tell when it's time to start making the cuts, it starts getting a little more of a cooked flavour to it. If it runs on a bit further, you'll get sort of what I would describe as kind of getting like a smoky or a burnt tire kind of flavour, or if it starts drying my throat or burning in the chest. So as soon as I'm getting that slight cooked flavour, that's when I'll cut it to the veins.
I see. Do you find that you'll get more from nosing it than tasting it, or tasting it versus nosing it?
I think it's definitely a combination of both. You won't get the dryness on your throat just from the nosing itself. So I definitely have to taste, but only enough just to wet the tongue, really, because it's coming off the still, starting at about over 83%, and we will cut anywhere between 80 and about 79.8%. So it's still quite strong at that point.
And when it comes off the final still, then so this bottle I have here is 63% ABV. That's the ABV it comes off at, right? This hasn't been cut in any way.
Oh, that's been cut where our spirit comes off the still when it's all collected. It'll be about 81.6.
Oh, it will be. Okay.
Yeah.
So you bring it down to 63. It goes into the barrels then at 63%.
Depending on the type of cask, depends on the ABV. If it's a first fill bourbon, I'll do 63.5. Virgin wood, I fill at about 58.
Okay, very good. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Paul Corbett. Paul is the head distiller at Clonakilty Distillery, and he's educating me on the new make spirit, the single pot still new make spirit that is coming out of the distillery. I've got the recipe here that won award for best new make spirit at the World Whiskey Awards in 2019, was it? Or was it earlier this year?
It was the 2020 awards. 2020
awards. Brian has a question for you, Paul. He's wondering, do you change mashing temperatures or fermentation times and distillations depending on whether it's 60-40 or 40-60?
For mashing temperatures, no, we always do a protein rest at 52 for about 25 minutes, and we raise it up to 64 for an hour and a half for the conversion of the starch to fermentable sugars. We will then bring it up to 70 because in the grain itself, there's two different types of starch granules. There's large and they're small, and those smaller granules have a higher gelatinization temperature. And then from 70, we will raise it to 77 to cast into the lager tun. But no, we keep the temperatures the same.
Okay. All right, so let me give a little nose of this. So what should I be getting on the nose now when I...
So you have the slightly lighter spirit, so you should be getting, you'll still get some biscuit and oatmeal coming through, but there should also be a fruitiness to it. So the yeast we use has it's more of a dark fruits flavor coming through.
Definitely get that fruitiness, all right. It's so floral, it's so crisp and almost like pineapple citrusy on the nose. And not everyone would be used to sipping on new make spirit then at 63%. You'd normally be taking paint off the walls with something of that strength. You wouldn't think it's at 63%. There's the harshness. You don't feel the harshness at all, do you?
No, it's incredibly smooth, actually.
How does one new make spirit become smoother than another? I mean, there's so many variables, I'm sure, but what are you looking for to change or to work on to get that way?
Well, we run our middle and our spirit still over about 10 hours, which is quite slow. So when you're running it that slow, you're not putting a lot of energy into the stills. So the amount of evaporation is quite slow. And that keeps a lot of the heavier, more or less desirable or harsher flavors down in the pot. Our stills are also quite tall, slender necks, which are designed to give you that lighter spirit. And our spirit still also has an inclining line arm. So it means any of that vapor that condenses in the line arm will run back down into the still rather than forward into the distillate.
Okay. You could drink this without aging it further, couldn't you? It's so enjoyable.
Definitely.
Yeah. Sure, haven't they been making liquid like this in Cork for generations? They might not have had a license to do it, but they were making it anyway.
They still are.
All over the country. We have a couple of other questions there, Paul, coming in as we're sipping on this. A lot of questions about the type of yeast that's used and does that type of yeast matter that you use?
The yeast has a massive influence on the whiskey. And especially on the new make, because that's really the flavors you're tasting coming off the still. So I use a distiller's yeast that I was already familiar with, that has a real kind of dark fruit flavor to it. In the future, I started my career as a microbiologist. So hopefully, maybe next year, I'm going to start a project where I'm going to try and isolate a novel yeast strain from somewhere around West Cork, maybe up by our warehouse from flowers or insects. That's where a lot of the wild yeast would exist in nature. So hopefully I'll be able to isolate a yeast, find one that can contribute a novel flavor and be able to propagate it up and use it as a bespoke strain for the distillery.
Oh, brilliant. The yeast is something that doesn't get talked about a lot in the Irish whiskey world. There's a couple of people maybe thinking about it. You're, as a microbiologist, did you ever think you'd find yourself in the world of whiskey, talking about yeast?
Well, actually, as soon as I finished my degree in microbiology, my plan was always to continue on and do the Master Distiller in Heriot Watt in Edinburgh. It took me a few years longer to get there than I had planned, but it was always in my future.
I believe we have a mutual connection, maybe twice removed, but you were in Heriot Watt with university with somebody from Stranahan's in Colorado. Is that right?
Owen was my flatmate.
He was your flatmate?
Yes. Many hours into the night drinking whiskey. You'd learn more in your apartment just talking to Owen than you would from any book.
No. And Owen is connected now to Diarmuid Distillery in Colorado, with Patrick Miller, the owner and distiller there. And Patrick, I was up visiting Diarmuid last week in Colorado, and he's coming on the show next week. But he told me the story about how you're all connected, and he said that tonight, because you're coming on the show, they're live streaming. They're sharing this, our live stream on a big screen in the distillery tonight in Colorado. So hello to everybody in Denver.
Hi everyone. I was supposed to be in Denver this winter for Owen's wedding, actually, but I was going to be in Kansas, but I was going to be coming down to Denver. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation, I'm not going to make it, but hopefully next year instead.
I had an extra drink for you up there, if that helps you at all.
Yeah.
You can rest assured. I had a sip for you. Lorcan wants to know, how much impact does yeast have considering the terroir barley focus now?
Oh, well, yeast has a massive flavour. As when you were nosing and you tasted there yourself, all that fruitiness, that's coming from the yeast. That's the fruity esters. So you can get your yeast to create even more of these fruity flavours if you have a really high gravity wort, if you increase the temperature. Anything that will have a long fermentation, this kind of stresses the yeast and forces it to make more of these fruity flavors.
Oh, it's so fruity. It's so easy to drink. Would you ever think of just bottling and selling that without waiting your 3 to 12 years to age the whiskey?
I hadn't planned on it, no, but if the people want it, I'm sure we'll think about it.
We'll start a whip round here. We'll start a GoFundMe to buy a barrel of it. This is very good. Very enjoyable. Almost easier to drink than a gin or a vodka to me now. Lovely. Okay, so you're laying down pot still whiskey. You're maturing it on Atlantic coast warehouses. I've been out to the warehouse. I've been out to the fields. I'm loving the location's incredible. While you're waiting for that to mature, you've been releasing whiskies in Europe and over here in the United States. And there's a big focus now in the United States on collaborations with breweries. Tell us a little bit about how that works. So we're going to bring in a second, we're going to bring in Corey Mull from Manor Hill Brewing, because I know you've got a collaboration with Manor Hill, but help our audience understand how a distillery like Clonakilty collaborates with breweries in the United States.
Yeah, so we have brand ambassadors in the US who will go to these breweries. They'll find beers they like, aging them in casks. We'll air freight those casks over to the US because beer can go stale quite quickly. So it costs a lot to get these casks over to Ireland. We'll fill them with our whiskey. Depending on the style of the beer, will depend how long they stay in the cask. And once we empty and bottle the beers, we'll send those casks back to the US to be refilled with their beer. Okay.
And there's been a number of those collaborations so far, and I know there's a number more coming. And I love the introduction of introducing beer or whiskey to beer lovers and vice versa, beer to whiskey lovers. Are the breweries always using those barrels then to perhaps age their beer, or is it always just a one-way transaction of aging the whiskey in the beer barrels?
No, mostly we send those casks back to the US to be filled with beer.
Okay, very good. Well, there's loads of questions about, people are very interested in yeast. I think you've answered most of them. We might need a whole show about yeast and microbiology and maybe teaching people how to make their own yeast at home. It's easy enough to do. What we're going to do now is I want to bring in Corey Mull, who is going to join us from Manor Hill Brewing. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about that specific collaboration and get Corey's thoughts and perspective on what you're doing. So let me move to... Corey, welcome to the show. What was happening in that video? Was it beer or whiskey going into those barrels?
That was the beginning. So that was, I don't know, now almost a year ago when we first filled. So they were first use bourbon barrels that we had procured ourselves and filled them with the beer. So that was our Baltic porter going into the barrels to be aged for 6 months. So that was the very beginning of this entire collaboration process.
Was there anybody on their hands and knees there capturing all of that beer that didn't make it into the barrels? You had me at the edge of my seat there with anxiety.
It's sad to see some of that waste sometimes, but it's a small price to pay. Yeah.
It is. As Brendan Carty, owner of Clonakilty Distillery in Northern Ireland, them lads are spilling some stuff, he says.
Sure.
But it's the price to pay for good collaborations. Corey, how did this collaboration with Clonakilty Distillery come about?
We were approached back in 2019 by our distributor. So we're distributed here in Maryland and D.C. and our distributor approached us and said, hey, there's this, distillery in Ireland that's got farm roots and they're looking to kind of expand their reach in the United States. They've done this a couple times in the New England area and they're working their way down to the mid-Atlantic and they want to partner with you all. Are you in? And as a farm brewery with, loving just doing some fun collaborations, we were definitely in. It didn't take long to think about it and definitely get involved.
I was looking at your website, Corey, and fascinated by, I think you probably have there's hundreds of beers listed there that have been special releases, limited run releases, prolific beer makers you are. Tell our audience a little bit about Manor Hill. Help us understand where you are and specifically what you do there.
Yeah, so we started in 2015, brewing beer in June of 2015. So June of 2020 was going to be our 5-year anniversary party that has been postponed probably for another year. And we have about 7 beers that we just make core year round. So we've got an IPA, a Pilsner, a Porter, and some other kind of beers that just round out our portfolio, and amber. And we also then do the first of every month, we do 2 new releases so that we can kind of let our brewers play a little bit and have some fun with kind of new styles and capitalize on what's popular in the market. And so that's where we get up to literally over 100 beers that we've done in those 5 years, because we're doing 2 new ones every month that we release. And then when they're gone, they're gone. We may revisit them once or twice, but for the most part, they're one off and never to be seen again. So it adds that like scarcity that people want to get it when it's released because they know they might not have another chance.
Manor Hill hasn't always been a brewery. Presumably, it's a 50+ acre campus there. Was it a farm? Is it still a farm? What was the land used for prior to brewing?
Yeah, so we bought the land in 2011. It was a working farm at the time. And for the first 4 years of us being there, it was a working farm. So the building that I'm in now with the tanks behind me, the brewery, was just a concrete, cinder block run-in shed that housed hay and equipment, and there was a trailer that the farmhand lived on at the time. And so when we purchased the land, we continued with the corn that was here and the Angus cattle that are here. And we've since expanded to add some egg-laying chickens. We have hops. We have a pretty massive vegetable, herb, and fruit garden. We have beehives. So we're very much a working farm, and all 54 acres we use to make sure that kind of the land, is something that we can kind of produce out of. And so we lived here for 4 years before it was ever a brewery. And so the brewery came about in 2013, 2012, when Maryland passed farm brewery legislation. We decided to jump on that. It took a little while for all the legislative hoops to kind of jump through. But we started operating in 2015 as a farm brewery. We're now the largest farm brewery in the state of Maryland. We were the first in our county, and we continue our farm operations, and that's kind of core to what we do here. So the spent grain that we use in the brewing process gets fed to our cows. The fruits and vegetables, to the extent that we can use them in our beer, get used in our beer. When we do, small batch, we throw raspberries, blueberries, whatever we've got available to us, we try and make it all come full circle.
So you never need to go to the store. You just walk outside the door and grab whatever's growing.
That's the plan. Yeah. Everything that you need is right here. Yeah. We have a farm stand on the weekend, so we sell our Angus beef. We also sell, all of our produce and vegetables, and kind of make it a one-stop shop for our consumers too. So they can come and grab a beer, maybe take some pickles home and some tomatoes, and they're set for the weekend.
It sounds like you don't need to leave, and maybe you're the brewery most unimpacted by the challenges of COVID. I'm sure you're very impacted, but at least you have food growing and beer to drink through these tough times.
Yeah, we don't have to grocery shop if times get too tough, for sure.
Ellicott City in Maryland might be familiar to many for the wrong reasons, being in the news in 2018 and before, severe flooding, which caused a lot of damage and casualties. Has that affected how you've brewed and your own business?
So our farm, while it's the proper address is Ellicott City, we're a farm that's a little bit off of that Main Street area. So we're about 10 minutes just west of the Main Street area, which was the one that was impacted by the floods and that you would have seen on the news. We do own a restaurant that is in Main Street that we purchased in 2016, about 3 weeks before the first flood occurred. Our location is a little bit upstream or uphill from where a lot of the damage was, so we were fairly lucky during both the 16 and the 18 flood. But it's such a tight-knit community down there, and they've all been through so much that we're all impacted. And when, the floods came through both times, the entire town was shut down. There weren't sidewalks. There were, cars turned upside down through the streets. And so it impacted us in that way, and seeing our neighbors and our friends' businesses lost or damaged severely certainly had an impact on us as a business. And just when we recover, COVID strikes. We were ready to hit the ground running, and all of the businesses were open, and weather was turning, and it was looking good. And again, the town's so resilient and pulls together that COVID hasn't taken it down again. So there's still a thriving community down there that's getting by, for sure.
Over the course of this evening, we're going to be chatting with small business owners up and down the East Coast. And for those of you who are located in the states, the cities, the towns, or within driving distance of these small businesses, I would urge and encourage you to do what you can to drop in, buy a 6-pack of beer, buy some tomatoes, buy some Angus beef, buy whatever you can to support our small hospitality businesses, brewers and distillers, because when all this is over, if they haven't survived, we're going to be very hungry and very thirsty. So we want to make sure that they can make it through this. I'm going to bring Paul back in from Clonakilty in a second to talk about the whiskey that has formed part of this collaboration. But I wonder, first, Corey, if you could tell me, what is Baltic Porter that was used to, that was what was in those you're putting into those barrels there. What is Baltic Porter? I have a little drop of it here.
So Baltic Porter, and this is the the beer that we had just canned, and it's also available on draft here. It's called Spotted Whale. So it was kind of a mashup of the cows that we have here on the farm and the whales that are so iconic to Clonakilty, being off the coast of Cork. So we decided to name it Spotted Whales, and our brewer, who's quite the artist, had a little fun with the labels. Baltic Porter is a maltier, darker style of beer. Baltic just gives it a little bit more hop character, a little bit higher alcohol content. So a lot of porters that you're used to, American porters, run in the 5 to 6% range. Baltic porters get above 8%. With the barrel aging on this one, it's a 9% ABV. So it's going to have a little bit more of a, especially with the barrel aging, a boozy kind of finish to it. But we thought the chocolate notes and some of the cocoa that comes through of a Baltic porter would soak into the barrels and really give that whiskey some cool character, and still provide the hop character that we know is super popular and was important to Clonakilty as well. So the Baltic porter was kind of the perfect marriage of all of those flavors to add to this collab.
Aren't you very ambitious bringing porter to Ireland? Don't we make some of it ourselves over there?
Yeah, for sure.
Paul, help us understand what happened when those barrels came over to Clonakilty. What happens next? How do you choose what goes into those barrels? Talk us through that process.
So what was going into the barrels, we're going to do a blended whiskey. So this is 50% malt and 50% grain whiskey has gone into these. It was in there for about just over 6 months. So I find with the darker beers, take a little bit longer than some of the lighter beers to mature. You need to keep them in to 6 month range to get those roasty, chocolatey notes to come through. Also, when with these roasted beer collabs, you want to keep the ABV slightly raised, because the lower you go, you start to lose some of that chocolatey notes and some of the hops start to overpower them. So this one is bottled at 48%, 48.5%. To keep that chocolatey, but you still get some of those slight citrusy notes from the hops coming through.
And which one of you has bottles of this on hand? Who's got a bottle to show the camera of this collab? You got one there?
Yeah.
You put Corey's up there first. Yeah. That's the bottle there with Manor Hill logo on it. Looks lovely. Very good. So 6 months in the barrels, and then you're bottling it in cork and then sending it back in bottles and then shipping back the empty barrels separately, so that, Corey, you can then reuse those barrels for the spot, putting the Baltic Porter in to create the Spotted Whale. Is that how that's how it works?
Yeah, we'd love to get those barrels back and do another round, and we can certainly make a Baltic Porter, or we can start to experiment with some different styles on the next round as well.
Lovely, lovely spice from the kind of heat of the ABV, but there's a lovely kind of a warm nutmeg chocolate profile on the note on the tongue there. That's feels like almost like a seasonal kind of a Christmas flavor profile.
Yeah, you get some bitter chocolate on the front.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, like a very high cacao content chocolate.
Corey? Yeah, I get a lot of chocolate. There's a lot of like almost a chocolate ganache, but then there's some lime coming through later from the hops, and that little bit of spice. So I kind of, when I'm drinking this whiskey, what I think is sort of a chili lime chocolate bar, if you've ever managed to come across one of them.
Yeah, that's a great description. Yeah. Corey, were you aware of Irish whiskey to any extent before this collaboration happened? Had you tried Irish whiskeys?
I mean, I don't know if I can say the names of. I mean, the most popular Irish whiskeys for sure. I'm familiar with, but not Clonakilty specifically. And I'm a whiskey fan in general. Whiskey, bourbon,
Yeah.
There's a huge overlap in whiskey and beer, as you said earlier. So for sure familiar, maybe a little less with Irish, other than I know that they're triple distilled, so they've got like a different finish than some of the more American whiskeys that we have over here.
It's true that if you don't mention any other whiskey brand, they just don't exist. It's just that simple.
I figured it was better safe to not say anything.
No, we're allowed to name them. We won't turn into pillars of salt, I don't think. We're all inclusive on these shows, which is great. I find that most people's introduction to Irish whiskey in America is when they're lying on the floor of the bar and at 2:00 in the morning, somebody hands them a shot of Jameson and says, here's a good idea, take that.
Right.
And that's rarely the best way to appreciate Irish whiskey. Tell me this, is Baltic Porter similar to Imperial Stout? Lorcan wants to know.
So Imperial Stouts are going to be a lot more, they're going to have a thicker mouthfeel and finish a lot creamier, whereas the Baltic Porter has a more dry finish. It's a little bit thinner, less viscous. You get more dark fruit flavors out of the Baltic Porter as opposed to the stouts, where it's kind of got that chocolatey, more kind of caramelly, sweeter notes to it.
Gotcha.
I should probably, before the questions start coming too fast and hard about yeast, like I saw earlier, I'm not a brewer, so I'll do my best to answer the questions, but I don't know how technical I'll be able to get.
No problem. We won't hit you with anything too technical. So this whiskey is just about to hit the market, or is just launched, right? I think it's just on the market right now, isn't it? Shopclonakilty.com is a shop. Yeah, it's for sale on the online website. A limited number of these, and Clonakilty were in touch today to let me know that if anybody is interested in buying a bottle of this, there's $5 from every purchase is going to be donated to the Ellicott City Fund. Let me give the details of that here, to the Ellicott City Partnership, which is helping with the damage and the kind of return to normality in Ellicott City. Padraig will put in the details on the Facebook comments there, the link to the shop. If anybody wants to make a purchase, feel free to go in and do that. Let me mute there. All right. In terms of whiskey beer collaborations, Corey, are there more that you'd be interested in doing down the line?
So we've done, since the Clonakilty introduction has occurred, we've done one with a local distiller here in Maryland where we've done a whiskey beer collaboration. And that one, ironically enough, was with an Imperial Stout. And so, yeah, we love working with distillers. It's, similar in kind of what we do, but different enough that it kind of gives our brewers and our team something exciting to kind of to play with, and not just kind of go in every day and do the same thing. Right.
So for those who want to visit, you're open with social distancing. You're open with some limitations, but business is open, and you're looking for guests to visit, are you?
Yeah, we're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we have a 54-acre farm, so there's plenty of room to spread out. We've got a full tasting room that has all of our beers on tap. With you can get some beer to go. You can come check out our chickens and cows. We've got our farm stand open, so you can grab some tomatoes or cucumbers or jalapenos. Yeah, it's kind of a cool scene, and everybody's been really supportive of us and really respectful of the rules that we have to follow here. So it's been nice.
There's the more I sip on this, the more I'm getting that chocolate. The more I'm getting that like a dry, lovely, like a dry chocolate finish that just sits there, and you almost want to have to be chewing on a bar of chocolate along with it. It's a lovely collaboration. So congratulations on that collaboration. And for those of you who want to visit Manor Hill Brewing, please go give them your business. Corey, thank you so much for joining us. Manor Hill Brewing's collaboration with Clonakilty Distillery is available now on shopclonakilty.com for those who are interested. And it is a Baltic Porter Cask collaboration, 48.5%. So Corey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us. And hopefully I'll get up to visit you at some time and eat some steaks and drink some beer.
Yeah, let me know if you're ever in town. We'd love to have you. Thank you for having
me.
Will
do. Thanks so much, Corey. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Corey.
Paul, you're a gentleman as well for staying up so late and giving us perspectives on yeast. I didn't know there'd be so many questions about yeast and whiskey. and all things Clonakilty. Tell me this, what of the range that has been released so far from Clonakilty is your favourite whiskey?
That's a tough one. I really like our cognac cask. I have to say they came out really well.
The cognac cask is very good, yeah. How long was the whiskey finished in cognac?
For the batch we just released today, it was most of it was 22 months, and some of it was about 19 months.
Okay. Would that be a typical finishing period, or does it vary dramatically between the likes of cognac and port?
It really depends on the fill of the cask, really. So this new one would have been 1 first fill, 2 second fill casks. I really wanted to keep one in there a long time, so it would have a lot of not just the cognac finish, but also a lot of that wood interaction. So I think it really came out special.
Very good, very good. What are you most excited about that's coming down the line from Clonakilty? Whether you can talk about it or not, we're going to drag it out of you. But what are you excited about for what you're working on at the moment?
We have some rum agricole casks that I think are going to be produce some pretty nice whiskey in the future. And I'm also working on doing more dark beer finishes. I really, really enjoy how the stout and the Baltic porters are influencing the whiskey. So I think I'm going to experiment and maybe brew my own stout and use that for the casks.
Very good, very good. Keep it all in-house. The one last question for you on yeast, because I know it came up earlier and it has me thinking too, when you talk about developing perhaps your own strains, you're talking about wild yeast then, is it, as opposed to what you'd purchase? Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a wild yeast that we'd find. We'd have to grow it up and propagate it. It'd be a lot of work. Probably get involved with maybe UCC, the University in Cork, would be able to help with their facilities there.
Did you go to UCC? Is that where you went to? Is that where you studied, or where did you go?
Yeah, microbiology in UCC, and then Master Distiller at Heriot Watt.
Okay, very good. Well, listen, Paul, you've been up longer than you should be, talking about whiskey for more hours in the day than anyone thought possible, I'd imagine. Thanks a million for joining in with us. We're about to head up the east coast of the United States now. So while you're sleeping, we're going to keep sipping on whiskey, and we're going to learn more about some of the other collaborations and interesting things that people are doing with your own whiskies. So will you come back on again and talk to us at some point in the future, maybe when you've got your wild yeast?
Yeah, no problem. I'll be back.
We'll give you matchsticks to keep your eyes open. Just make sure you bring the Cork jersey.
Of course. I'll always have one of these lying around.
Fair play. Up Cork. All right, Paul. Listen, thanks a million for joining in.
Good night.
Cheers, Paul. Thanks so much. That was Paul Corbett, head distiller at Clonakilty Distillery, who is working on these great collaborations with different breweries up and down all around the United States, actually. So we are on a whistle-stop tour of the East Coast. It's time to, in the next minute or two, I'm going to go to our friend from Clonakilty, Anne, who is in the DC area, and our friend Cahill as well. But before I do, I want to check the comments and answer any questions that you have. So tell me where you are right now, what you're drinking, what's in your glass. I'm always fascinated to know what you're drinking. Brendan Carty, fellow distiller there, weighing in. Wild shirt, he said, never mind the yeast. The Cork shirt is not a wild shirt. It should be a very familiar shirt. It's been on television so many times in September at the All-Ireland finals. You should be familiar with a Cork shirt, Brendan. Brendan coming from up there from County Down. You wouldn't see many County Down shirts around. Great stuff anyway from Paul Corbett. If you haven't had a chance to visit Clonakilty Distillery, and if you're in Ireland right now and you're outside of Dublin, because sadly nobody can leave Dublin at the moment, but if you are down in the southern provinces, be sure to drop into Clonakilty there. Maybe Paul might even say hello to you and give you a little elbow bump as well in these social distancing times. So we're going to move now to DC. I'm going to bring in Anne to begin with, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about cocktails. But before I do that, let me play this. And welcome to our live stream. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Tell us, where are you in the world at the moment? You're in DC.
Yes, so I'm in DC. And let's see. It's definitely different here than it used to be. But yeah, I'm in DC based. I'm working with Cahal. I know that we're getting him on in a moment. And I'm just happy to work with Clonakilty.
Tell us what you do for Clonakilty at the moment. How are you involved with the distillery?
So I'm sales rep down here for Clonakilty. I work with all of the on-premise accounts, and I do all of the Clonakilty SKUs. Currently, in today's climate, we're doing a lot of virtual events, virtual happy hours, virtual tastings. And so that's what we're doing with Cahal, and he'll sort of introduce the cocktail that he came up with, crafted himself. But we're also, a lot of people are tasting the products. They're loving what they're having. And a lot of my top bartender friends, they're getting creative with the products, putting it in a whole bunch of cocktails. It's funny, there's so much to the whiskey that you can really, play on so many of the different notes that are in it. I've seen a lot of really interesting expressions.
Yeah. Tell me, what was your experience with whiskey prior to meeting the folks at Clonakilty? Did you enjoy whiskey? Did you detest whiskey? What was your experience?
So, I guess this is kind of interesting. When I first had whiskey, I absolutely detested it. But yeah. I know that it's a spirit that people pay good money for, and I was like, okay, well, it's an acquired taste, so I'll need to acquire the taste. So I started out with whiskey sours, and then I sort of moved into the world of whiskey there. I was working for a distributor here, so doing that, I had a lot of whiskey, and now I feel like I've got a pretty good palate for whiskey. What's interesting is before exploring the world of Irish whiskey, I had only had, like you said, most people's first experience with Irish whiskey is the other brand.
The other brand. We can't name the brand, apparently. You can name it.
is Jameson. And I had Jameson and I didn't like it. And so from there, I didn't really do much exploration into Irish whiskey. I sort of stuck to my Scotch and my rye. Those were my two favorite. And then, I started exploring the Clonakilty line and more of the expressions. And I really fell in love with what Irish whiskey has to offer. I really do see the appeal of it. And now I can't remember the last time I had a rye. I really enjoy exploring Irish whiskey now.
So I think we have to clear your shelves behind you of everything that's non-Irish. Yes. Strip your shelves of non-Irish and just stack you up there with Irish whiskies. Yes, somebody wrote in the comments here. We have a comment from where was it? Paul saying, "Can you hide that Jim Beam behind you? You must have Jim Beam on your shelf there somewhere."
Yeah, I'll hide it in the trash.
Straight to the trash.
You want to know something really funny? This is a hilarious story. I wasn't going to say this, but I told this story yesterday because I had just remembered it. Oh God, this makes me look so bad. When I was first introduced to drinking, you start out with your light spirits, and I was kind of afraid of anything that touched wood or oak. And I worked for this guy before I moved to DC, back in California, back in Beverly Hills, and I was his event planner, his event coordinator. And one day he was feeling really, really gracious, so he busted out a bottle of. It's kind of related to whiskey. I think it's funny. It's a funny story. He busted out a bottle of Louis Trey. The Louis
Cognac.
Trey, the freaking the $5,000 cognac. And he poured it out for everyone. And I had some, and I was like, I didn't like anything that touched wood. And I thought to myself, I don't really like that whiskey. It's a cognac. So I feel like my palate has come a long way since then.
Your palate has evolved. And I was really curious to learn more about something specific that you're doing in Clonakilty, because there would be a group of people that would think that Irish whiskey is for drinking neat. It's not for adding water or ice. You are working on something that takes it a little bit further, something that I think is very important too, and that is putting great Irish whiskey into cocktails to make great cocktails. And I'd be a firm believer that the better the ingredient, the better the cocktail that comes out the other side. Help us understand what you're working on specifically on the cocktail side of things with Clonakilty.
So we're doing a few different things. A project that I'm really excited about is we're putting together a book of Clonakilty-based cocktails with the whiskeys and then a few gin cocktails with our Minky gin. And like I said, I've got bartenders. I'm talking to some of the top bartenders here in DC, and they're working with the cocktail and they're sort of experimenting. And it's really interesting to taste the cocktails that they make, and how they really just take one common element, which is the whiskey, and they bring out so many different expressions of it. I've had it in heavier, more wood, chocolatey cocktails, and then on the opposite side, I've had our single batch in some really light, fruity, almost tropical cocktails. So it's really interesting. I definitely would say definitely mix it, because if you don't mix it with cocktails, if you just have it straight, that's great and all, but cocktails can really show you more in a whiskey, that you might not get
Right.
otherwise.
Tell us about the book then that you're working on. So you are working with bars and restaurants around the United States that are using Clonakilty in their cocktails. Is that right?
Yes. So
okay.
So what we're doing is we're working with bartenders, and the book is going to go into more than just the cocktails. We're also going to be, talking to the bartenders, getting a little bit about their story, how they got to where they are in the industry. It's always interesting. We're going to have Cahal on in a second, and he came from Ireland, and now he runs this really, really successful Asian fusion bar. Like, I'm really excited to hear how he got into that. But yeah, so we're going to have more than just the cocktail. We're going to have the bartenders, experience in the industry, and really, going to go deep there. So that's the goal.
So why don't we bring in Cahal Armstrong, Irishman in Washington D.C. Let's bring Cahal in and have a chat with him. Cahal, welcome to the live stream. You're a man with a chef's jacket on you, the sounds of the kitchen behind you in the most authentic way.
Right.
Welcome to our show.
Thanks a lot. Nice to be here. How are you doing?
Cahal, I'm doing great. I enjoyed chatting with you earlier and learning you're an Irishman, 30 years in DC. How did you find your way over there?
It's a long story, and I won't go on for hours about it, but I came to America for a summer job trying to get out of the restaurant business. I had worked in a couple of restaurants in Dublin. I dropped out of college, studied computer programming, which was incredibly boring. And I'd worked in a couple of restaurants there. I opened my first restaurant when I was 19, which was a catastrophe. And, 19-year-old boys should not own restaurants. So I came to America, where the streets are paved with gold, trying to earn some fast cash and get out of the restaurant business and go back to college. The old story, met a girl, and everything kind of went sideways from there.
30 years later, you're still trying to get out of the business you were trying to get out of back then in 1990.
Yeah, indeed.
Cahal is a chef. He is an author. He is a restaurateur. Cahal, you are, as Anne mentioned earlier, you're running an Asian fusion restaurant. What's a man from Dublin doing cooking Asian food for Americans? It's an interesting story. It's a very personal story, of course, which you find an awful lot in restaurants. I worked in DC in a bunch of different restaurants. I worked at a restaurant called Vidalia, which was Southern, and then another restaurant on Capitol Hill, which is called Bistro Bis, which was French bistro. And then I was looking to open my own place, which we found the right location for in 2004, and that was called Restaurant Eve. Restaurant Eve was a special occasion, fine dining, with the Obamas there for their anniversary one year, which was kind of cool. And then we opened a chipper, a traditional Irish fish and chips joint in Alexandria.
And then our next project after that, we took over a kind of diner in Alexandria that was owned by Senator Mark Warner, and turned that into something a little bit more elegant. And then we opened a big, huge pub called Virtue Feed and Grain. And then we opened a big gourmet shop called Society Fair, which had all kinds of fine meat and cheese and chocolates and everything, fancy food you could imagine. And then we opened another restaurant called Hummingbird, which is still in Alexandria. That's just casual, local American food. And I kind of felt at that stage that it was time for me to. A great opportunity was offered to me for a location on the wharf, the new Southwest waterfront in Washington, which was this huge project, and it's really exciting. And when I looked at it, I said, you know what I want to do there? I'm going to do an Irish pub. And they said, no, you're not. We already have an Irish pub, so you can't do another one. So coincidentally, at that time, I was approached by the Obama administration and asked to go to Thailand to teach about American food on a culinary diplomacy program. So they sent me over there teaching about American food, which I know very little about, to be honest with you, and learning a lot about Thai food, which I had loved eating, but never really had ventured into cooking because I didn't know anything about the ingredients. So I spent some time in Thailand. My wife is Filipino, so I spent years around her and her family cooking, eating Filipino food. And then I got into competing in martial arts. Like, chefs are kind of obsessive compulsive. So I started practicing Taekwondo, got into competitions, won US national champion twice and US Open once. And, that's Korean. So we were eating Korean food. And so, just through, I guess, one thing led to another. I ended up cooking Thai, Korean, and Filipino food all in one restaurant. Incredible.
And now that is what you're doing full time, all the time. You're focused 100% on Asian cuisine.
Yeah, I'm here at Kaliwa pretty much all day, every day at the moment. I'm trying to line it up because we have a new project coming on. Hopefully next year, after we get a vaccine, we're going to open a live music venue with Irish food. It'll be kind of a modern Irish restaurant in Tyson's Corner. You're the first to know.
I'm the first to know. I won't tell anybody. Well, keep us posted on that. For those of you who've just joined us, we're coming live from Kaliwa Restaurant in Washington D.C. I'm joined by wonderful guests tonight. Cathal Armstrong is the chef proprietor at Kaliwa. And part of the goal tonight, as halfway to St. Patrick's Day, is to meet interesting Irish people and interesting people who are involved in the world of Irish whiskey and doing interesting things, because we have enough to be sad and angry and mournful about at the moment, and any opportunity we get to celebrate anything, I think we should grab hold of. And so tonight we're celebrating Irish whiskey, and we're celebrating the Irish in America and the Americans who think they're Irish, and that would be 110% of all Americans, which is the good news. Cathal, you have a cocktail, I believe, that's going to end up in this cocktail book. Are you going to show us how to make a cocktail tonight?
I am. I'm going to attempt to show you how to make it anyway, with
good man.
With the restrictions of technology here. So Anne asked me to make a cocktail for this event, and we tasted the whiskeys, and we found this particular Clonakilty. We can see it there, which when I tasted it neat, I found very, very nice tropical flavors from it, probably distinctively apricot, and so we a lot of the food that we use at the restaurant comes from a small farm in Lancaster in Pennsylvania. It's an Amish farm. And particularly in the summer, we'll buy large quantities of fruit from them when it's in season. I bought lots of apricots this year, and we canned them. And I loved the apricot flavor in the whiskey. And I thought that we'd make kind of an interpretation of a Manhattan using Clonakilty and apricots. So we poached the apricots in a little bit of simple syrup, some elderflower, some vanilla, and I pureed them then. And then I strained it through a very fine mesh cloth to get this beautiful apricot nectar. So, very simple cocktail. We're going to take a measure of the Clonakilty. I like to measure my drinks, because if you want a balanced drink, you got to make sure you don't put too much booze in it. So 1.5 ounces of Clonakilty, and then we have this really cool apricot liqueur made by Gifford, and we put 1/4 ounce of that. You know, typically the Manhattan is bitters. You know, so this apricot bitters works really nicely in our little cocktail here, and put some rocks on that. And again, I put 1.5 ounces of our nice apricot nectar into it. Get that into our
Something tells me there's apricots.
Yeah, it's really you know, I made one, and sometimes you have to go back and forth and test and experiment and test again. But I found that just on the first go, we got this we got the recipe just right. You know, just take it up a little bit over the rocks, and open that up, and then strain it into our nice martini glass. You get this really pretty amber cocktail, and you know, just to be in keeping with the tradition of the Manhattan, I took some nice maraschino cherries, which we marinated in the apricot liqueur, just so that it has that traditional cherry in the bottom. And you guys look jealous, and I'm drinking.
What do you call it? What's the name of this thing?
We call it the Clonakilty Apricot Manhattan.
Look at that. The Irish helping the Americans to refine their very own cocktails using Irish whiskey. I love it.
It's delicious. It's so good. I can't wait till you taste it, man.
And didn't stop staring there. I didn't see her blink for 2 minutes while you made it.
Or drooling.
Yeah.
Will that be on the menu in Kaliwa now? Would we be able to drink that if we pop into you?
Yep. So two ways you can get it. One is you can get it at the restaurant, and the other is we're doing a fun event on the 2nd of October. And if you email Dustin at Washington D.C. for $35, you get a kit that you can make. You'll be able to make the cocktail with me. I'm going to teach you how to make a proper Irish coffee, and there'll be some snacks in there. We're doing a fun variation of steak tartare and some crab dip, and then there's a whole bunch of swag that Clonakilty are throwing in. You get it delivered to your house. If you're in the Delmarva area, we'll deliver it to you on the 1st of October, and on the 2nd you get on with my ugly mug, and I'll teach you how to have some fun.
I love what you're doing. I love the approach. I'm always so tickled to chat with Irish who have chanced their arm, and I hope you don't mind me saying so, because I would be one of the same people who, although I don't have the same restaurant success as you, I have been chancing my arm for all the years I've been over here, and I think that you've taken that and that charm and turned it into a remarkable business now, where you're entertaining presidents, which is no small feat for a man from Dublin.
Not too bad. I mean, we are chancing our arm ultimately, and hopefully we don't get caught.
We were talking earlier before we came on, and I said to Cathal that if either of us lost our accent, people would know. Well, I won't speak for Cathal, I'll speak for myself. People would know that I've got nothing to back it up. So I have to keep the accent. Cathal's there 30 years in DC and still speaks like a man from South Dublin.
That's the job. Got to keep it on the home front. I talk to my ma every day. That keeps me in check. You went
to school in Cork for a bit, didn't you?
I went to what do we call elementary school in America, in Dublin, that was English speaking, and then my parents wanted me to go to Clonakilty Owen, which is an Irish speaking secondary school in Dublin. And so in order to prepare for that, they send you to there's a boarding school in Ring, where they beat the tar out of us, called Colossian Arena, and that's kind of a preparatory school to prepare you for switching from English to Irish as a first language. And it was quite an amazing experience, I can tell you. I think the highlight of that whole year was the time that I was introduced to Ballymaloe House. They took me out of there for one weekend to go to Ballymaloe, which was just amazing. I go back there as often as I can. Fabulous spot. But,
is that what got you interested in food when you went down there to see Myrtle and Darina Allen and their approach to slow cooking, or were you interested before that?
It had always been part of our family. My dad did most of the cooking in our house, which would be really unusual, in the 60s and 70s in Ireland for a man to be cooking at all. And he was a travel agent, so we spent a lot of time on the continent. Like, we'd be sitting around the table on a Friday night, and the 8 of us having dinner, and Dad say, "You want to go to Portugal tomorrow?" And we go, "Yeah, sure." So packed the bags and off we went, and we went to Tunisia and Greece and Spain. I spent a lot of time learning French in France, doing a foreign exchange every year. And then we had a tiny little garden in the back of our house that my dad grew as much as he could for us to eat in. So kind of those foundational blocks led me down the road of food, I suppose. They were kind of annoyed with me getting into it as a profession at the beginning, until I started ringing them and say, "Wait till I tell you what I cooked for today," and then "Wait till I tell you what I cooked for tomorrow." So they're kind of, they're proud now. So
I'm sure no complaints now when you're serving them up some of the cuisine that you're making. I'm sure. When you open this restaurant or this venue that you shared with us so graciously and gave us a little scoop on, will there be a focus on Irish food, or is there more of a focus on entertainment in terms of the music side of things? What's the Irish element?
It's going to be an Irish restaurant. I don't really want to do. There are so many great Irish pubs in America, and I don't really want to do that. I kind of want to do something more along the lines of what I had in my cookbook, so maybe if you call it a gastro pub, maybe, I'm not real sure, but just really well-prepared Irish food. There are lots of incredible ingredients in Ireland that are hard to find here. There's great cheese makers, and the Dublin baked prawns I want to get over here, and beef has come into. Irish beef's come into America. Lamb and pork are supposed to be coming soon. So, if we can showcase some of those things and have a great live music scene at the same time, like, it's not really a concert venue, it's just a good collection. There's a really cool band in D.C. called La Unica, and it's this Mexican fella, and he plays the violin, and he has an Irish fella in the band with him who plays the paddock stone and the baron. And between the two of them, they play a brilliant blend of Irish Mexican music, and it's so much fun. They're a blast to watch. That's the kind of thing that I want to showcase out there, just where Irish culture is and where it's grown and shown.
And you and I would probably think the same way. I'm guessing from your approach is that the modern Irish how we look at Ireland as a kind of a culture it can be different from how the Americans typically look at Irish as a culture. And I would always look at Riverdance as being this seminal moment where where Irish culture was reevaluated in terms of its maybe a little bit more progressive than historically thought. So anything that can move the needle towards what we know Ireland to be, rather than perhaps what the Quiet Man movie thinks it is a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you look at some of the great chefs in Ireland, like Derry Clark and Ross Lewis, and they're just cooking some amazing food using indigenous Irish ingredients. That's kind of the direction I want to go with. Nice.
There's a fabulous cocktail bar in Cork called Cask, and Cask is focused on using most of their ingredients from Ireland and they're out there foraging on a daily basis for ingredients and garnishes, which is a fantastic thing to see. So I'd love to see more of that happening. Maybe we'll do a. Go ahead.
It's still funny when I talk to a lot of Americans that they think that Irish food is, boiled to be Jesus out of it,
Right.
But I mean, that certainly was the case a long time ago, back in the dark ages of the 40s and the 50s. But yes. I mean, Ireland, when you think of Ireland and how the Gulf Stream affects it, the fact that we have green grass year round, we're growing vegetables outside year round, we're grazing cattle and sheep and pork outside year round, and it's a tiny island surrounded by incredibly rich seas with brilliant mussels and lobster and of course the salmon, and there are just so many amazing ingredients there. And the way after the Celtic Tiger and the way the economy changed in Ireland, we're so much beyond the Quiet Man that it's time to show that off a little bit.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I'm all for showcasing that side of Ireland, and so much to showcase. It never fails to amaze me to see an American surprise at seeing so many cows in a field, because it's not a typical sight in America, is it?
No, it's not. And you know what's funny too is like a lot of people that come to Caliwa will ask me, we're going to Ireland on holidays, where should we go? You know, and I'd give them a list of restaurants and places to go and things to see. They've never been there before. And they'll come back and say, you know what really surprised us? The food was great.
Yeah.
But didn't I
We're
tell
not
you?
surprised.
Yeah. We're not surprised, but
We didn't have the word organic in Ireland growing up. We just had food
Right.
because there was no other way to make it, was there?
no. I mean, organic is nothing new, really. I mean, it's just the way food grows. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
It's not synthetic. It's organic.
It's not that complicated. Let me ask Anne, what is your favorite cocktail to make with Irish whiskey as you've been visiting your accounts and understanding what's being made? What have you enjoyed the most?
You know what? I'm a sucker for the classics. I told you I used to not like whiskey or anything dark. Well, my taste in cocktails has completely changed. I love cocktails that are spirit forward. So Manhattans and old fashions are my absolute jam. So an old fashioned with, either our single batch or the new Manor Hill. By the way, the new Manor Hill release is my absolute favorite. So put the new Manor Hill in an old fashioned and you will be blown away. It highlights the spirit just enough. And then all the, the sugar and the orange peel really bring out some interesting characteristics, and it makes the finish last really long. So that's what I would do, an old fashioned.
I'm with you. I love an old fashioned. I'm sad now that I didn't leave almost nothing left in my Manor Hill sample. But the good news is it just means I have to go out and find more whiskey to drink, or you might see there's probably 1 or 2 bottles behind me I could probably tap into. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the old fashioned as well. And Irish whiskey, especially heavier, even spicier, pot still whiskies are great in an old fashioned, and the spice lends itself wonderfully. So let's make it a goal. And sorry to say this, Anne, but there's 2 Irish people now gathering up on you to eliminate all component whiskies that are American and replace them with Irish. We'll make that a 10-year target, but we'll work diligently towards it.
Yes.
Carl's on board as well, I think, perhaps.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Dubs, I mean, sorry. Come on, the Irish.
Oh, listen, here we go now. It's regional. In Ireland, as of 1 hour and 23 minutes ago, Dublin has been relegated to, sadly, a backseat position in Ireland. People can't leave Ireland or can't leave Dublin. The virtual walls have been put up around the county. The Pale is back again. It's very unusual times. Very unusual.
But we'll be watching Leinster tomorrow morning. Are you watching that? You watching rugby at all?
Yeah, the time difference is a big challenge for me. 8 hours behind Ireland.
Yeah, sure.
It's a big challenge. Yeah. Where would you go in DC? Tell us Irish pubs. Not an Irish pub isn't for everybody, but is there an Irish pub that you'd go to watch the rugby?
My good friend and neighbour here, Mark Kerwin, is actually right next door to us at Caliwa. Has a great pub called Kerwin's. They show all the rugby. That's really that. If you're in for the sport, that's the place to go for sure.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, to those who are with us from Maryland, from DC, from that part of the East Coast, as I mentioned at the start here, we have to celebrate, we have to sustain, we have to help and support those businesses that are continuing to work through very, very challenging times, businesses that continue to produce for us so that we have good food and good drinks, and many are doing so at considerable personal expense. So if you're in the DC area and you want to take part in their halfway to St. Patrick's Day celebration, October 2nd, do visit kaliwadc.com or send an email to Dustin@kaliwadc and support them. Carl, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to the time when I can drop in and perhaps clink a glass with you in person. That would be a lovely time.
Yeah, please do. That'd be great. Great to see you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, likewise. Thanks for introducing us to that cocktail, and thank you so much for joining us. And Anne, thank you for gathering both Cahill and all of these great cocktail makers for this Clonakilty book. Maybe you'll come back and tell us about the book when it's put together and walk us through some of the cocktails and maybe even do a demonstration for us.
Definitely, I would absolutely love to do that. I'll let Cork know once that's all complete.
Great stuff.
Stay in contact.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. Be safe, and thank you so much for contributing your time to our live stream, our lock-in tonight. And I look forward to seeing you, Cathal and Anne, in person, hopefully in the not too distant future. So thank you so much for joining us.
Slán.
Thank you, guys.
Slán go fóill. Cathal Armstrong and Anne Dino in Washington, D.C., flying the Irish flag, flying the whiskey flag, flying the Irish food flag. Look, it's worth repeating over and over again. We have incredible produce in Ireland, both liquid and solid form, and people are doing incredible things, taking chances, putting their own money behind things like Cathal is with his restaurants, has been doing so for the past 30 years, and is out there having been introduced to spirits aged in wood and now is in love with them, also flying the Irish flag for us. And so I'm looking forward to my trip to DC to experience Kaliwa and perhaps have a cocktail up there. So we are going to move on. It's time in a second for a musical guest. We're going to bring back on Patrick, who is a multi-talented individual. He's going to spend a little bit of time with us because there's more to Patrick than just his musician abilities, his musical abilities. So please stay tuned. Put some more whiskey in your glass. Put some more Clonakilty in your glass. And a reminder to you that we are running a contest at the moment, thanks to Clonakilty, to give away 2 swag bags that contain a t-shirt and coasters and a hip flask and 2 glasses. And there is 1 set for a man and 1 set for a woman, because these shirts are different sizes. And all you have to do to be with a chance to win your own swag bag from Clonakilty is to take a picture of your Clonakilty bottle or glass in front of the live stream and then post it to our Facebook group. Our Facebook group is Irish Whiskey Fans of America. Please do your best to post those pictures there. And in the next 48 hours, we will look through those pictures and we will choose a winner. So be creative, and the swag bag from Clonakilty may be on its way to you. All right, so I think it's, I'm pouring a bit more whiskey into my glass. I'm going to pour some Clonakilty single grain that has been finished in a Bordeaux cask. This is going into my glass next. A wonderful whiskey. Single grain does not get enough attention as a style of whiskey. Single grain, meaning it is doesn't mean that there's just one grain in it. It means that there is it means that there is a grain other than barley that is dominant in there. That is typically corn. This single grain is a wonderful floral expression that I'm pouring into my glass here, and that is allowing me to have a few sips while we bring on our next guest. And let me pull this up here. Thank you to everyone for tuning in this evening and for sticking around. We've got lots more to come. At the end of this evening, we will be ending up at a mobile Irish pub, believe it or not. So you won't want to miss it. So don't go anywhere. Mobile Irish pub is on the way. But before that happens, Patrick Marin, you're back in the spotlight one more time.
I am back. Well, thank you for having me back.
Thank you for joining
All I do
in.
is talk about whiskey.
Right? I mean, what else are we going to do on a Friday night? That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Brendan Lynch in Kinsale has just poured himself a drop of the Clonakilty single grain as well, which is great news. Patrick, you were introduced to us tonight as a musician, but we never got a chance to understand a little bit more about you. Before you give us another tune, who is Patrick Marin? You're a man of many talents. I was looking at your website and I couldn't figure out which one of your talents I'm supposed to focus on. So maybe you'll tell us.
I like to call myself a jackass of all trades. No, I just happened to be raised by good parents who fostered a love of all things, and I fell in love with Irish folk music pretty naturally. And of course, since the Irish sing about whiskey, that ended up being something that I got more and more curious about. So the older I got, Irish music and whiskey became 2 things that everyone just kind of expected me to know more about than them. So I had to double down and actually learn the things and be the guy with the answers. And that has turned into now for about 10 years in New York being a bartender, 5 of it solely focused on whiskey cocktails and the differences between whiskeys. If you were looking at my website, you've probably seen I have a small organization. It's really one man right now, but it's called Bar Rover. And my idea is being able to take miniaturized tastings to people who are curious about being educated, but maybe, they want to eliminate the intimidation of how some people behave in bars and kind of exclusive mentality. I prefer a much more inclusive approach where you can ask questions, because I don't want to make anybody feel belittled, because it can be a very exhaustive and complicated topic with all the different ways that whiskey gets made. So it became a niche for me to be able to answer some of those questions at a high scale and at an entry level. And that provides a lot of time filler for me.
Tell us about the whiskey bar that you've been working at. Help us, introduce us to that particular location.
Yeah, I work at a bar called On the Rocks in Hell's Kitchen. It's closer to a library of whiskey than it is a simple bar. We only carry 1 vodka, 1 gin, 1 rum, and 1 tequila, and you don't get much to mix it with. Really, people are bringing their friends and bringing clients to our bar to learn more about the different types of whiskey and the differences between them. So I get to look every day as head bartender at a gorgeous wall of 375 different bottles from across the planet of all shapes and sizes. And the owner and I always try and rotate out the stocks. So it's been a quiet mission of mine since I became more educated about things besides the one Irish whiskey we shall not name, to try and help people understand that there are a lot of different types of Irish whiskeys as well. And so Clonakilty dovetailed beautifully into my life as a great example of ways to talk about these things.
Well, first of all, you're now the third person who says we can't mention Jameson. We certainly can mention Jameson. There's no problem. It exists. It is the behemoth. There's no doubt about it. In fact, would we be here today if it wasn't for Jameson investing, and Pernod Ricard, its parent company, investing in the growth of Jameson and consequently the growth of Irish whiskey? So we will always do a little hat tip to Jameson, and we won't dare exclude it from the conversation. So fear not. Tell me, how is the Irish whiskey selection at On the Rocks?
Oh, it is delightful. We actually have one of the only Teeling 34-year-old bottles in the world. We have some very nice Connemara options. We have some Kilbeggan. We've played with, of course, the full Clonakilty line that's currently available in the United States up until everything COVID happened. Our bar does not have any food. So as a drinking-only bar, which is the best kind, we did have to shut down. So we have not been open in 6 months to the day, pretty much. And so we try and rotate a lot of different stocks out. Napa Castle, we had a 21 year for a little while we were playing with. I'm a big fan of the Dare Gaelic and the Barry Crockett coming from Middleton's. So it's usually about trying all different products out and having people understand that some of these things, as we were talking about with casks earlier, some of these things don't get repeated. They're one-off experiments. They're two-off experiments. It's really about the distiller's interests. And so that exclusivity and that curiosity means that sometimes the excitement is chasing something that doesn't exist anymore. That's why I like to compare it to a library. So it's all over the place.
I'm always encouraged and enthused and excited when I hear of a non-Irish person celebrating, showcasing, being excited about Irish whiskey, because for years, well, for certainly in our generation and probably our parents' generation, it took a back seat for many, many different reasons, not because of quality. It would have been because of distribution more than anything, and availability. But Irish whiskey was not always on the top shelf. And now, I mean, you talk about a Teeling 4-year-old, there's the likes of the Redbreast 27-year-old. There's amazing whiskies coming out now that allow us in Ireland to go head to head at the highest level with bourbons and scotches. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of some of these things. As green spot and yellow spot become more popular, as in New York anyway, we're still trying to chase the red spot because of how little there is. And the excitement just when you're surrounded by people who have that excitement, it's easy to stay excited and to become more curious and to have an open mind about trying new things or seeing why somebody does something a little bit differently. And that's a huge part of how we operate at the bar that I work at.
So I want to get a couple of tunes out of you, but before I do, you were shipped a very nice little package during the week, as was I, and I have no problems in admitting that I get very excited when I hear a knock on the door, and I open the door and there's nobody there, but I look down and there's a nice bubble wrapped package, and this bubble wrap package happened to contain something very unusual. And
the Whiskey Fairy sent us.
That's it. Yeah. All I can see on this is that it says 15-year-old cask. I want to taste this. I want to drink it. Do you know anything about this whiskey in this bottle?
I know about as much as you do, but I could fill in the gaps and help talk to people about some of the differences. And as we taste it, they can see our first impressions as we get to enjoy it.
Okay, so here's what I do know. There are four casks of 15-year-old single malt have been earmarked for the United States from Clonakilty's sourced stock. So Clonakilty has stockpiled some fantastic whiskies while they wait for their own whiskey to mature and to see the light of day. And 4 of those casks are going to make their way over to the United States. We are maybe the first 2 people to taste this 15-year-old single malt that'll bear the Clonakilty name. And I think that's a very exciting thing.
And cheers to Mr. Corbett for letting us taste it.
So I'm pouring a drop in here. And by a drop, that's the end of it.
Oh yeah, almost all of it went in with one glass because you want to savor this. You want to really get everything in on the nose. You want to be able to talk about it. Thankfully, I happen to have my own Clonakilty Tua so that I can drink it the right way.
Oh, look at you!
It's Sláinte. Okay.
While we're sipping on this and while you're exploring your flavors, I want to give a shout out to McMullen's Irish Pub in Las Vegas. They are showing our live stream right now. And a shout out to Diarmuid Distillery in Colorado, also showing our live stream to their audience. So hi Las Vegas, hi Denver. I was in both of those cities in the last week. Due to social distancing, I couldn't see everybody I wanted to see, but we'll be back to you. But anyway, Sláinte. Oh, this is good.
Yeah. So the first thing that I notice on this is that the floral bouquet that you normally get from Clonakilty, that very bright, fruity note, is much more tamped down by focusing on a single cask and on a single malt only approach. No, as far as this labeling suggests, no grains in the mix. You're getting much more of that deeper, oakier campfire. You're getting a little bit of the tannins. It's going to linger and it's going to spread out in your tongue all the right ways. This is definitely one you want to savor and you want to have some fun with. I also notice that you do still get some of it on the nose. It's most definitely still Clonakilty's spirit. And that doesn't change just because he's pulling back on the grain element and focusing on the malts.
Well, to me, it's a bit subdued on the nose, but makes up for it on the palate. There's a fruit bomb explosion on the palate.
Yep.
After about 5 or 6 seconds in there.
I'm getting a little bit more like blackcurrant or raspberry, like the darker berry notes that don't tend to pop until you're hitting a lot more of a woody or neutral spirit, or a freshly like a long aged spirit here, something that's only recently come out of the cask, and that's bringing a lot of depth to the sides of the tongue and right in the gums here when the flavor starts to spread out and when it starts to breathe a little bit on your mouth.
There's a lovely dried fruit finish where that sweetness turns into a lovely dry, almost brittle like texture on the palate.
Yeah.
Kind of a medium finish. Single cask Irish whiskies are very hard to come across. We don't often find single cask Irish whiskies in the United States. It's difficult to put marketing dollars behind a single cask. And I know lots of the state regulations make it very difficult to make that happen. But it's exciting that there's a way figured out for these 4 single casks to make their way into the US.
Well, and one of the other interesting things about that too is that the nature of the warmer climate in Ireland or in the States as compared to Scotland affects how fast the cask can sort of be used up. So to some degree, there's always a natural process when it comes to whiskey aging to use 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 barrels, depending on where you are, what you're, are you spending money on controlling essentially like a humidor for cigars, but a warehouse for your whiskey aging? How much are you letting the elements allow the wood to breathe, and how much are you controlling that so you can kind of soak every little bit out as that barrel is squeezed by the temperature, expanding and contracting? So for 4 casks, I mean, give or take, if you're looking at average American hogsheads, that's maybe in the neighborhood of 2,000 bottles at cask strength, maybe more if you're bringing the proof down, but we don't even know the numbers. Probably less,
I'd imagine it's a 200-liter barrel, perhaps, the ex-bourbon, perhaps, which would yield probably 200 bottles by the time you're finished with the Angel's share, if you're lucky, per cask. So now you're down to 800 bottles across 4 casks. It sounds like On the Rocks.
Yes.
On the Rocks needs to take one of these casks, says Podrick.
Oh, Podrick, I promise you we will. As soon as we are allowed to start shopping again, the owner and I have already started talking about what we're going to do after lockdown closes here in New York, and we can go back to some of our, not business as usual, business with improvement. But yes, sorry, my math was wrong on that off the top of my
you're
head.
grand. Brendan's in Kinsale in Cork, not far from Clonakilty. He tried a 15-year-old at Clonakilty last weekend, which was at 43%. No drop was left behind. The one we have here is at 55%.
Yeah, that's the other thing. This is decidedly smoother than I would have expected from a 55%, looking at that label.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the aging on the malting has gone down here, probably because of the warmer temperatures in Ireland compared to the temperatures in Scotland, is that having a little bit more time for the barrel to breathe is going to smooth out some of those rougher elements as well. And it's going to provide a really nice, gentle kick that's only going to burn when it starts to hit the back of the throat here. That's one of the best parts about exploring Irish malts, in my opinion. That's my big pulpit at the bar, is talking about the different types of malts that are out there, breaking the understanding that, well, America just does bourbon, Scotland just does malts, Irish just does blends. It's not true anymore. Now that we have better science, we have the opportunity to finesse the technique based on the preferences of the whiskey makers.
And if we can just bring down some of those tariffs, we'll get more single malts in from Ireland and keep the price affordable for our lovely American friends.
From your lips to God's ears.
This is a lovely whiskey, fruit, vanilla, a little bit of pear to me on the nose, subdued on the nose, lovely medium finish, but that middle piece, that lovely fruit explosion. I love your notes there of like blackcurrant, raspberry, absolutely coming through for me.
Well, and with a couple flicks of water in what I have left in here for the dram, you do get a little bit more of a nose explosion, as you said. That nose is going to pop a little bit more. Don't be afraid to be sacrilegious. Water was part of the whiskey's ingredients. It is absolutely helping, I think, to the nose anyway, at least while I let it sit.
Well, you're a man that's got through that whiskey a lot faster than I have, which means it probably frees up your arms for an old tune.
I think I can make that happen, yeah.
You played a lovely tune for me earlier.
Thank you.
It was about brown ale and whiskey.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was going to play next for you.
Good man yourself. You're listening to Patrick Marin, Clonakilty brand ambassador, as well as head bartender at On the Rocks, actor. What else? Bon vivant. What else can we add to your list of titles?
Roving musician.
Roving musician. Okay, traveling man, give us a tune.
Well, the seabed's host to many a treasure, fine gold and riches all beyond measure. But the thing I seek, to which all these pale, is my captain's list to make old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. As our ship, the Valiant, took her privateer crew from port to port, only one thing's true: you can spend your money or free hear this tale. There's none as sating as the old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. Now our captain, he's known for his wicked grin, as the sop does drip from his ruddy red chin. But it's not blood which will brim his grail, just a homemade batch of that old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. But then the ship was tossed one terrible day, the recipe lost as we drift into the bay, and now all that's left are some broken sails and a mere 10 gallons of that old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart whiskey, that's the old brown ale. Well, now we'll dock for a half weekend, we'll rest our legs. If you come on board, you can drain these dregs, and if we scrape bottom, doesn't mean we're through. Just in time comes the captain with a brand new brew. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart of whiskey, that's the old brown ale. For it's 1 pint sea, laddies, 1 pint pale, 1 quart of whiskey, that's the old brown ale.
Unmute myself there so you can hear me. Congratulations, that was amazing. I love that tune. I'd never heard that before.
It's a little bit more obscure than your average traditional Irish music. I actually saw an article a couple years ago. So I should preface by saying I am in a band with other fans of Irish folk music, and that was one of our first original songs in addition to the traditional Irish and folk. So that is something. I found an article about a shipwreck off the coast of, I believe, Norway, that had discovered that there were some intact barrels, the way the ice had formed around the shipwreck, and that the beer was still drinkable. And so I started thinking about that, and I started working on some stuff with my bandmates, and of course, the Irish idea of an earworm that is both completely listenable, but also has a lot of accurate facts about ships and drinkability. And we threw something together, and we miss our Irish festival circuit greatly during this time of COVID, but it's a little something that is easy tune tapper for a Friday night.
It is an earworm. Since I heard it earlier this afternoon, it's been in my head all day, and I was excited to hear it again. But it's got this there's a lovely delicateness to it. It's kind of there's a romantic element to it, but there's a toe tapping piece that you're not expecting as well, that just makes you kind of raise your glass and tap your foot.
Well, thank you.
The audience loving it. Paul Andrew says his newborn is waking up to the song. Well, your newborn will have a good life ahead, inspired by that music. Lots of applause, lots of cheers, and thank you for that. Really, really great tune.
Thank you.
I finished my. I'm down to the last drop of my 15-year-old. That's the end of Clonakilty 15-year-old for me. I hope to see that bottled in the not too distant future, because when I do, I'll get myself a bottle of it. It's a lovely, lovely whiskey.
As do I.
Yeah, really good. And I love finding unusual whiskeys from Ireland. And when I say unusual, single malts are such a small part of Irish whiskey, sadly. But the more we can experience them and enjoy them and introduce them to people, I think more people will seek them out. So
our little Clonakilty crusade, if you will.
Sure, listen. What else would we be doing on a Friday night except drinking whiskey and wishing for more?
Exactly.
Well, listen, Patrick, I could talk to you all night. I could listen to tunes all night. I don't know if you're sticking around, but if you are, we might be able to drop back to you for another old, maybe an old Clancy Brothers tune or something in a bit.
Absolutely.
Fair play. All right, Patrick, thanks a million for that tune. We'll come back to you very shortly. That's Patrick Marin, a man of many talents, or as he says himself, a jackass of all trades. They're his words, not mine. We are on the Clonakilty crawl. We are working our way up and down the East Coast from Maryland to D.C. to Connecticut, and we will be off next to Pennsylvania. We will be visiting our friend Kevin McCready in about 2 minutes' time. Kevin is in the Gary Owen pub in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and we will be going and having a chat with him, a big whiskey fan himself, and a man who is involved in whiskey beer collaborations. So I'm looking forward to talking to Kevin in a second. So thanks everybody for tuning in to our lock-in. It's Friday night. It's when we come together to raise our glasses, to toast one another, to toast our health. And so many of you have made friends through this live stream. It's a great thing. As always, the only ask I have of you, there's no money I'll ever ask of you. Instead, all I'll ask is that you press share and that you invite your friends to join us. Share this in any groups that you're in. Share this on your Facebook profile. Share it on Twitter, on YouTube, or even your personal Facebook profile. And why I ask you to do that is because I know the collective power of us all coming together. I know what it means when people are isolated and alone and have nobody to talk to and have nobody to hang out with. The lock-in is where that happens. It's where we connect. It's where we communicate. That's where we bring people together with a common interest. That interest, of course, is Irish whiskey. And over the past 6 months, we've brought together musicians, storytellers, distillers, blenders, drinkers, enthusiasts, blackguards, everybody in between to come on and have a chat, have a drink, and hang out. And maybe meet somebody that you can communicate with, that you can hang out with in person at some point as well. So I am working my way through these Clonakilty whiskies. The next one I am going to turn my attention to is one that is a particular favorite I know in our Facebook group, has been shared many times, and that is the Clonakilty blend. That is the port cask finish. I have been enjoying a number of port cask finished whiskies lately, and I've come back to Clonakilty quite a bit. I have a full bottle of it in the corner there. I didn't tell Clonakilty that, or they wouldn't have to send me a small little sample. But I really enjoy the port finish. So I'm going to pour myself a drop of that in here. Please drink along with me. Raise a glass with me. Whatever is in your glass, whether it's Clonakilty or Redbreast or Powers or Jameson or anything at all, sláinte to you all. I'm delighted to be here every week. Thank you all for your support. And we are going to, let me check your questions here. Sheng says he's very late for the party. Is Clonakilty still shipping to the States? Yes, Clonakilty is available widely in the United States. You can go to shopclonakilty.com. You can find details there of they ship to most states. In fact, there's very few states that they don't ship to. Podrick says that the port cask finish is the best seller in the USA of all of the expressions. And Mark says this is our regular Friday night these days. Well, I'm happy to keep you company, and I'm delighted and privileged to be part of your Friday night, Mark. So thank you very much for that. Johnny says he loved their port cask, but sadly it didn't last very long. That's the truth, isn't it? And Paul says, if you're not crawling, you haven't done it right. We are on the Clonakilty crawl, moving up and down the east coast, and we are going to go now we're going to bring in 1 minute, we're going to bring in Kevin McCready, our man in Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. Kevin McCready, how are you, sir?
Not bad. Yourself?
Not too bad at all. Okay. You are in the Garryowen pub in Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. What's an Armagh man doing in Gettysburg?
I haven't figured that part out yet.
How long have you been there now?
We've been down here. We're 13 years open now, so I think that's why we got COVID this year. So 13 years.
Unlucky 13.
Something had to happen. So I got Corey with me here, our whiskey guy.
How are you, Corey? Come on in there and come on in a bit closer to the camera so we can see you.
There you go.
There's space for all of us. Corey, are you an American man balancing out the Irishman there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Tell me.
My grandparents are from Belfast, so.
Oh, is that right? Is that why you were hired?
It was a shoe in the door.
A shoe in the door. You're a good whiskey pub in there as well. I see you sipping a pint of Guinness as well, though.
Yeah, I'm having a pint at the minute. Corey just made us up a cocktail he wanted to show you all tonight, or wherever it is on the screen.
Very good.
But
tell me a bit about the Garryowen pub. Give us a little bit of background on the pub.
Yeah, we opened up the Garryowen here 13 years ago, June 1, 2007. So June 1, we had our 13th. We didn't have a 13th anniversary, but we've been here 13 years. So, but no, it's we've got a good whiskey selection. I mean, we're over 200 Irish whiskeys alone. So if you don't find the whiskey you like here, you'll not find it anywhere. So,
if you don't find the whiskey you like, get out. You're not welcome.
Yeah, you're not ready for it.
Kevin, you were telling me.
Jameson too.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like every Mexican restaurant has a Carry Corvo.
Tell me this. You were telling me earlier you're the number one seller for Guinness in Pennsylvania. Is that right?
Yeah, we are indeed. Yeah, number one for that, and number one for Powers as well. So
Powers
is our number one whiskey here. So
good combination too. A pint and a small one.
That's the best combination. So. I'm just trying to see what Clonakilties we have. They're up in front of me here, but
we've got the small batch, the port, the Bordeaux, and I think we have another one. I know we have the Bordeaux and the port.
Yeah, and then we're working with Clonakilty as we were talking earlier too. Like I said about the one we have coming up that's been aged been aged right now back over at the distillery there for. It's our house porter. They've been aging it in a barrel with it, so it's supposed to be coming along nice.
Well, I want to talk to you about that beer and whiskey collaboration because I'll talk to you in a little bit about that because that's an exciting thing that's coming down the pipe. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious. I'm fascinated when I see Irish people in unusual places in America. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a small town, really historically very significant, but there can't be a huge population in the town, is there?
No, it's only 7,500, believe it or not. So it's a small town. The town itself's only a square mile or two, Yeah. It's nothing. So it's not. But we get people. I mean, we have people coming from all over the place, So it's great to see. I mean, obviously they're not coming for us. They're coming for the history. But we'll give them some new history to take home with them. So,
you'll get them if they're thirsty.
Yeah. So,
was that most of your business prior to the challenging situation? Was tourism coming into Gettysburg?
No, actually, no. We've been pretty much a local bar that has tourists, not a tourist bar that locals come to.
Okay.
So we've been very fortunate that we kept a great local crowd. I mean, that was thanks to a lot of help from some really good local people that built the place as well as anything else, So we are busy in January as well as July,
Okay. With a name like Gary Owen, you'd have to be a rugby pub, wouldn't you?
No, we're not. It's actually not. No, I was a carpenter up in Manhattan for years before I came down here, and I was involved with the 69th New York.
Yeah.
The Irish,
Fighting Irish.
The Fighting Irish, yeah. So their armory is still active up there in Manhattan, and I used to go to their officers club once a month or so.
Okay.
And, it's the Gary Owen. The tune is their regimental tune, so
yes,
it was Jeff Slack was the colonel at the time I opened here.
Okay.
And I asked Jeff and stuff like that. I said, hey, do you mind if I borrow the name for the bar? So they were good enough with it. So since the 69th obviously was down here during the battle and stuff like that too. So
right, yeah.
It all tied in that way.
The Civil War.
A lot of Irish involved in many American wars and battles internally and externally over the years, often overlooked. Yeah, the Irish involvement.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean this area, Gettysburg. You think South Central Pennsylvania. It's a huge Irish area too. So it is. I mean.
Is that right?
The building that the bar is in, it's three, scattered over three buildings. But the first building that we were in was built in 1814. And the first inhabitant was a Red War veteran, but he was also from Antrim. So the first person that lived in the bar was an Antrim man.
Right.
His daughter actually owned the bar. It was the first bar that was here, but it was on the other side of that building. So there's been a bar here since in the early 1800s. But the current incarnation's been around, not as a Gary Owen, but it's been around 95 years as a bar, steady. So.
A little birdie told me that you're a fan of Redbreast as well yourself, Kevin.
Yeah.
We're allowed to mention it. It's all right.
Yeah, you're calling me out on a good thing.
Would you have a good selection? So you've 200 Irish whiskey. So then you've everything from the Redbreast 27 down, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Yep, we have everyone. So I mean, well, some of the off the wall ones, with some of the not so goods all the way up to the really really goods. So.
Yeah. Do you have to introduce locals to these whiskies, or do they already know what these are?
We run a passport program for the locals.
Okay.
For the regulars, so
We've got
100
and
we have
almost 200, probably 200 or so members in the passport club.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
okay.
And there, we run an event every now and then. We haven't done obviously for a while now, but we'll run an
Right.
event and get somebody, people in and stuff like that, come in and
Release.
talk about the whiskeys. We've had folks from most of the distilleries from home come over at one
I know.
stage or other, so,
I know.
and just do a presentation and tasting nights and stuff like that. So.
Corey, were you aware of Irish whiskies beyond the one that everyone shoots down their throat at 2:00 in the morning? Were you aware of the good the quality that keeps going up the further you go up the chain there?
Well, growing up here, I learned pretty quickly. I mean, be younger, I knew what Jameson was, but also having this bar around, I learned about things like Patties, Powers. I remember when I came here when I was younger, it was a sign out front that said, come in and try one of our 23 different Irish whiskeys. And every couple months, it just kept growing and growing and growing until it was like, come in and try one of our 89 Irish whiskeys. And it was like, holy crap, I didn't know there was this many Irish whiskeys out there.
You're going to need more shelves.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
we
coming.
do.
We're building them all the time. I think we're
Or just
spending
work your
more
way
on
through them
shelves than
yourselves.
Anything else?
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing to see the growth of Irish whiskey. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd imagine when you first came over here, if you were told that there'd be 200 Irish whiskies on a bar shelf, you'd have probably laughed.
Yeah, no, definitely. I wouldn't even say there were 200 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's great to see an explosion in it, and that it's being done right, by a lot of. I mean, there's ones that I can't get yet that I'm dying to get. I mean, you probably tried them yourself at different times at home and stuff like that just aren't available right now.
And Pennsylvania being a controlled state makes it a little bit harder.
It's fun.
They keep the list.
Yeah. So you have to put in a request for it, and then they decide whether they want to fulfill it. But even our local state store has stepped up to the plate, and they're carrying probably one of the better Irish whiskey selections in the state,
Is that right?
For the public. So it's also good, I mean, people can now get, even 5-6 years ago, you couldn't really get Pars in a state store around here.
Right.
Now, most of them are carrying it because
Well, now all the bars here carry it because the employees drink it
the
too.
employees, everybody, we used to laugh. I mean, it was Monday night would be like all the other bar employees would come here for their after shift drinks and stuff like that.
Yes.
We built up a good selection of whiskeys that way too.
I mean, 200 is no small selection. For those of us, or for those of my audience who are joining from outside of the United States or even within the United States, a little quick explanation on what a controlled state is. Pennsylvania is one of them. I spent 10 years in Ohio. It's another one. And a controlled state basically means the state purchases the liquor and they then sell it on to distributors. And so when the state purchases the liquor, they maintain the database and the list of what they're going to bring in. And if they decide that something isn't on the list, then you can't buy it or sell it in the state.
No.
And my understanding is that Pennsylvania is the single largest purchaser of alcohol in the world.
It is. It is still, again, to this day, it's
Fighting Ohio.
Hey, it's what we got, so we have to work with it.
But I think with 200 whiskeys, you've done pretty well working with it.
There's more out there. We're working on them. So,
Oh my God.
but it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Well, when it gets to be 366 whiskeys, you'll have to stop because you can only have one different whiskey a day.
Yeah, well, there's actually people that are trying to work it that way. One friend of mine came down he was down for a long weekend. He decided, and that was back when we had 25 or 30 whiskeys. He wanted to do it over a weekend. So he was happy when his wife wasn't so happy, but
I'd imagine,
he was happy enough. So.
Tell me about your passport club. We've got some questions from the audience wondering what is a passport club and how does that work?
Well, what it is, do you want to grab a passport?
Yeah, we've got one around here.
Yeah, we should have one around. But what it is basically is you buy into the passport, you buy your passport. It's only $20 or something. It's a nominal fee just to cover ourselves.
Yeah.
And when you get your passport, instead of going and getting a stamp for every country you go, every time you try a new whiskey, you get a stamp for any of the Irish whiskeys. So, and you'll have a little space there you can put your own notes in of what you thought of it at the time or whatever else, and you can come back to it. And, we hold on to the passports here, so you don't forget them. And then every month or two, we'll do an event where you come in, you'll get a tasting or sampling of a different selection of whiskeys. You know, usually the guys are, you know, the distillers are good enough to come down with, you know, some
passport.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, lovely.
Some little pages to kind of fill out your whiskey selections, put notes. We had to put a couple certain ones on pages to the representatives, but you know,
right.
It's nice. People have fun with it because they can keep track. It's with that many whiskeys, it's hard to keep track of which ones you have tried and which ones you haven't tried sometimes. So it's nice to pull the book out. And
Yeah. You can pull it out, and like I say, you know, we have events for you, so you do get something back for it at the end of it. It's not just like, yeah, $20 for a little booklet, you know. It's and we usually pair that with, you know, some foods and stuff like that too, you know. We have a really good chef that sort of tries to pair the food with the samples of whiskey, and so. And
when you fill the passport up, do you send people off to the Irish Embassy to get a new one?
No, they get a free week and a half in a rehab. The Betty Ford Clinic or one of them, you know.
Has anybody ever filled the passport up?
I don't think so. I mean, back when we had the 20-something whiskeys, yes, there was people that were filling, you know, when we first started the whiskey program.
Yeah.
The passport program, sorry. Yeah, there was folks that filled it up, but we try and keep on top of them by upping the number every couple of months. So I think we just got
three new ones.
Three new ones today. So,
I mean, it's an amazing way to gamify whiskey drinking. Pay $20 and then thousands of dollars more, and we'll give you a few stamps, but you'll be happy.
Yeah, you will. You'll get a T-shirt maybe along the way too.
We're all heart up there in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, nothing but heart.
A T-shirt. That's a good one. Loads of interest from people actually in the audience there saying it's a great idea. Paul says he'd get wasted in one night trying to get all the stamps. And
we'll cut you off. We're not crazy. We'll let you drink responsibly.
There's a lot of people saying that the passport is a challenge, not a passport, and they'd like to rise to it.
It's passport around the world in 80 days, or around the world in 20 whiskeys or 100 whiskeys. So,
but listen, you're not just whiskey men; you're beer men as well. You like a pint. You have a house. I know you've done some collaborations with breweries in the past.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you've done in the past. Like I know you have a house beer. What's happening in the future with Clonakilty?
Well, we have a house porter that we started up. Oh, geez, it's probably about 10 years ago. We started a house porter, and what I did was, you know, I talked to. At the time, there were a new bunch of guys who were starting up a new brewery. So I got with them early on with it, and Ryan and Jesse helped us out. And geez, hold on a second. Oops, there you go. What I wanted was a stripped down porter. I didn't want a regular porter, so it's like, well, what would they have done back in the day? So hunted through history books and different references and one thing, and I tried to come up with like the oldest Irish style porter that we could. And then we said, we'll give it a twist by using smoked malts for it, because that's, you know, if there was a distillery out in the west coast of Ireland or something, they wouldn't have had the availability for gas firing malts to get a clean taste that we have now. So they would have probably smoked their malts with turf.
Yep.
So that's what we said. We'll have a turf smoked porter. And this is 10, 12 years ago. So we came up with that, and it's been our house porter ever since. It's called the Stubborn Irish Prig. There's a story on the name too, but
the Stubborn Irish Prig.
Yeah.
P-R-I-G.
Yep. Yeah, we had to soften it. So
I'd say that hurt you, did it?
No. You know, that was a story when I was a carpenter up in Manhattan. So I was told I would go far with the company if I wasn't such a stubborn Irish prig. So it stuck with me through the years. So it's like when I had the beer, it's like, well, that's a chance to make that worth something. So, but,
very good.
So we've been making the craic, and I mean, it's been going over. Last year we started our Roy Pitts is the name of the brewery. It's over in Chambersburg, which is 25 miles away from Gettysburg here. So they're local, two young guys that, you know, really have a passion for beers and stuff like that. So they started it up, and they've been exploding really nicely. So they got into canning the product. So I did screw up when I put it online first and said, you know, you can now get the prig in the can, but that's a different one. But you got that one anyway. So
There's a wonder you still have your license there.
it is, but so we ended up working with a distillery then in Lebanon, PA, not the country.
Yeah.
But we worked with a distillery up there. We got one of their whiskey barrels, and we aged. We did a small run of the prig that was aged for 3 months, I believe it was. So it was like a sour type of thing. So after that barrel was done and the beer was taken out of it, we had the limited run of that beer, and the barrels went over to Clonakilty, and we got them to age some whiskey for us.
Is that aging at the moment? That's there at the moment?
It's over there at the moment. We're chomping at the bit, ready for it, you know. I mean, we talked to Padraig and stuff like that, and I'm like, all right, it's nice you're telling me that it's there and it tastes great, but
good.
I want to taste it. So.
You're getting thirsty thinking about it.
I'm getting real thirsty thinking about it. We were actually hoping to have it done by the halfway weekend that we're at now, but
okay,
that didn't work out too well for us. But you know,
instead
hopefully we'll have it there.
Pints of Guinness and Powers is all you have in the meantime.
Yeah. So, but we'll get through it, and like I say, we'll be selling it because we are a controlled state. It's only going to be available in a small amount to the public. You know, we're talking with Roy Pitts Brewery. They're going to have some of the bottles. We're going to have some of the bottles, but Roy Pitts they have a place over in Philly, so it'll be available in Philly, as will the Stubborn Irish Prig is available in Philly at their place too. So
that'll be the name on the whiskey, will it? Stubborn Irish Prig.
Stubborn Irish Prig will be on the whiskey too.
I got it.
And
when do you hope to have it?
The picture that's on the bottle isn't me.
It's not you.
No.
I heard it. I heard it was.
What's that?
I heard it was you on the label. No.
No, it's not me. It's been rumored by a few people. Even my grandson thinks it's me. But
Padraig wants to know where your leather jacket is with all the studs on it.
Maybe here.
That's there behind you.
So, somebody knows me too well.
Does, yeah. When do you hope to have the whiskey then back in town? Do you know when it's due back?
I don't know. That's the question for Padraig. If he's on the line, see what he says to that.
Okay, we'll have to come back to it. November, he says.
November. Which one?
Which one? Which side of Christmas? Well, listen to me. If anyone is in Gettysburg or would like to go to Gettysburg, would you please drop in to the Garryowen and support and maybe pick up a passport? Pick up a passport there, have a bite to eat, drink some Clonakilty, or maybe work your way to Redbreast 27. They'll happily sell it to you. And support our small businesses, because if they're not here when we come out of this coronavirus, we'll all be thirsty and hungry, and we don't want to be. So I hope you get some support.
All right. Thanks very much, Barry, now, and good luck to you all.
Okay. Thanks a million for joining us, Corey. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us. Well. Thanks for participating in our halfway to St. Patrick's Day Clonakilty crawl. Pleasure talking to you. Hopefully I'll get to have a glass of whiskey with you at some point.
Yeah, God willing. Take it easy.
Pint again.
Bye.
Cheers. Thanks a million. Kevin McCready there and Corey in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, flying the Irish flag. I cannot stress this enough. There are small businesses that are doing wonderful things. Look, 200 Irish whiskies on a shelf. That wasn't cheap to stock. We need to support them. And if this lock-in can in any way point people in the direction of bars and restaurants that are doing great things, then that is something that it should be celebrated. So next time I find myself in Pennsylvania, I'll make it a point to get to Gettysburg, not just for its historical significance and for Lincoln's address or anything like that, but a pint of Guinness and a drop of whiskey, and you can't go wrong. There's great flag flyers from the island of Ireland all over America, and I'm really enjoying getting to meet them, getting to know them over the course of these lock-ins, and hopefully we get to do more with them over the coming months. We are going to go in a minute to the Rambling Inn in Connecticut. If the Rambling Inn is ready for us, we will go to them, and it is a mobile Irish pub of all things, and we're going to find ourselves in the middle of that pub for a bit of crack and a bit of chat in a second. But before we do that, I want to give again a shout out and a thanks to Clonakilty for joining us in this effort to bring people together, and for supporting our live stream, and for giving us some great whiskies and introducing us to some nice people. And that is a wonderful thing. So thank you to Clonakilty. Let me see. I do think we have the Rambling Inn ready for us. And let me just check your comments before I go in there. Paul is well aware of the Rambling Inn, good man himself, and great stuff. And I see lots of you are stocking up on Clonakilty whiskies, which is great. You're shopping online and buying yourself some Clonakilty whiskies. I'm still drinking the single grain. Mom's finished this little measure here of single grain, finished in the Bordeaux casks. And single grains are just unusual whiskies because it makes up the smallest percentage of the three Irish styles of whiskey: malt, pot still, and grain. Grain would be by far the smallest portion of Irish whiskies that are sold globally. So when you do get a single grain, it's a nice chance to try something a little bit different that's not barley forward. Typically, it's leaning on another grain, in this case, maize or corn, which is always very interesting and enjoyable to check out. All right. I think we're going to go to the Rambling Inn. Let me pull that up right here. While they get ready, we will play this. The Rambling Inn. How are you doing?
Hello, Barry.
Sláinte, Damien and Troy, how are you getting on?
We're well. We just had to boot everybody out for a couple of minutes so you can hear us. We have quite a crowd here in Connecticut.
Turn the camera around there. Let us see the crowd of people that we have. Show us the people.
Lads, could everybody come in for a minute?
Hey!
Come in for a minute.
Oh, come on inside, please.
Come on, everyone in.
Hey! Look at this.
Come on in.
Mobile Irish pub, New Haven, Connecticut.
Come on in.
Now they're all camera shy.
They're filling it up.
Nah, they're all camera shy. There we go.
She's like a full house. Unreal.
Where's Matt? Where's Matt Hoey?
Gonna go to the picture.
So Damien and Troy, what's going on here?
All right, guys, get on now. All right, you're done. You're done. You're done.
Go on, kick the
And
ball
you
out
all
again.
paint your traps. Go on, get out.
What is going on here? Is this your garden or what? What's happening?
It's a front yard. Cheers,
It's your
lads.
front yard. All right, what is the Rambling Inn? Would you tell us? Why are all these people standing in your room?
So the Rambling Inn it's a mobile Irish pub. Travels around the northeast of Connecticut, northeast of the US. Based in Connecticut, but we travel to Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all the way down to New Jersey. The lads just did an event for Barstool Sports last weekend, so we're flat out. Everybody loves the Irish pub, so it's an Irish pub. comes into your back garden, your event, your driveway, and transforms it into a full Irish pub restaurant.
Unreal. And and you're able to serve spirits and beer and everything from the pub.
In Connecticut, we hold a liquor license. Outside of the states, we travel, and then the guests, we would just provide a bartending service. But in Connecticut, like tonight, we're doing the halfway to St. Patrick's Day party here, and we've shepherd's pie out there. We have all the bits and pieces, Guinness stew, the whole lot, and plenty of Clonakilty flowing and pints of Guinness behind us.
Oh my God. Is it? Do you hook it onto the back of a car or something and drive it around?
I have a little mini metro and pulls it around. No, we're lucky enough. We have a big Ford. Welcome to America. A big F-350 Ford dually pulls it around and takes it up and down the 95 corridor, depending on where we are. So yeah, and yeah,
you wouldn't get away with that in Tipperary, an F-350
no,
or 150
anyway.
No.
Yeah, we can fit about 30 people inside in it. Well, pre-COVID we did. Now we kind of obviously keep it a little more strict. But we have an outside bar system as well. So we do a lot of weddings and corporate stuff, for a couple of hundred people, So we're busy, thank God. It's a nice...
30 people in the pub or in the truck?
Well, it depends how many staff we need. If it's an Irish wedding, we need about 35 people to pour the pints.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, they're not Troy size. If Troy stands up, he's in the background there. It's kind of like Father Ted, the cow in the background.
Are you very tall, Troy? You are?
Yeah. What would I be?
7'4".
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's powered by his Irish liver.
Made of copper, is it?
Yeah, so no, we're blessed. There's an awful grow and an amber for the whole Irish pub culture, especially here on the East Coast, up north, and people love it. We're blessed enough to do a lot of weddings and a lot of like milestone events and anniversaries. So God bless the Irish pub culture is not dead, and this whole resurgence in whiskey and all these amazing people like Clonakilty, they're really helping spread the word of Ireland, the Irish culture, Irish whiskey, and just the whole banter with an Irish pub. We're very lucky.
Do you find that many people are aware of the different Irish whiskies? Is there still a lot to learn for people as you go around the country with it?
It's so funny. Like a couple of years ago, it was all bourbon. Everybody knew all the different bourbons, but those that have kind of stepped into the whole Irish whiskey category are really. And somebody said they'd love it at their funeral. we can do that.
We can do that.
We need to check beforehand.
Take a deposit.
But no, definitely there's a massive, I suppose, not only knowledge, but people are eager to learn about Irish whiskey now, which is it's amazing. Before it was just Jameson, Tullamore Dew, and that was it. Now people, they know Clonakilty, they know Dingle, they know all these other fantastic little distilleries. Yeah,
brilliant.
It's amazing, And when we pull up to places, people expect it because they want to know what you have in the Irish whiskey category. And if you don't have it, they're you're kind of like a fake plastic Irish pub. So you need to have it, and you need to be pouring it, and you need to be pouring it in the right 2 glasses, They're not stories in tonight, Barry. We never got your delivery. Donald Trump is the mail slowed down a little bit.
I don't think your check cleared.
Yeah, be an IOU.
I'd say you'd get a police escort going into a city when they know what you're bringing into the city, would you?
We get quite a reception, and I think the looks we get is phenomenal. Recently, we went up to Treehouse Brewing. They nearly died when they saw us come in. We just stopped in there for a pint, but we forgot we had the trailer in the back of the truck. So we had the whole place outside taking photographs, and that was mad. But no, we're absolutely blessed. We're lucky to be doing what we're doing.
You wouldn't be able to pull a pub around the street, around the roads of Ireland, would you?
No, not in the back roads of Tip anyway, I'll tell you that. No, not with the yoke we're pulling, but we get there, with helicopters since the Celtic Tiger.
Helicopters.
We'll drop it.
So Damien, you're from Tipperary, and Troy, where are you from? You're an American lad?
Yep, Connecticut, born and raised.
Connecticut?
12 years ago now.
Half Irish.
I live
half Irish.
His liver is Irish.
My liver's Irish.
The top half or the bottom half?
Top half.
And why? How did you decide to get into running an Irish pub together on wheels?
Drinking pints of Guinness with Dave.
Tell that crowd to get out there. I can't hear a word you're saying. Shoo them out.
All right, let's keep it down for 2 minutes out there.
Lean in there close to the camera so I can hear you.
Hold on. There you go.
Right.
We've Cunis everywhere.
All right, good stuff. Lovely. I don't want to stop a party. Like, if people are enjoying themselves, like, I'm all about it. But, Jesus, I want to hear you too.
I know you're going to have about 300, I think, new followers tonight, Barry, on your Irish whiskey fans.
Brilliant. So, how did you decide to come up with this idea, the two of you together?
It's an interesting question to get asked a lot. Alcohol, lots of drinking. That's what brought that one about. Lots of nights, lots of drawing on napkins, and then one day we realized it was actually a good idea, and so we just decided to build it. It took us about a year and a half and a lot more pints, a lot more whiskey to get through it, but it was a tough one to do. So, but a lot of fun along the way.
No, it was the realization that just people were excited, to bring a little piece of Ireland into it, and it was very unique, and I think we're the only one doing exactly what we're doing. There's mobile bars around the place, but something that's kind of authentic, and we just take so much pride in it. Like after every event, before we even pull out, we're cleaning the lines. It's the best pint of Guinness in any mobile Irish pub anywhere in the world. That's a fact.
It's a small audience, small group there. Yeah, low bar, I'd imagine.
Never let the group get in the way of a good story, Barry. You know that.
So you have a good pint of Guinness. That's great news. Like,
no,
would you be flagged down like the ice cream van? Do you play music, Irish music, so people know you're coming to the neighbourhood?
Unfortunately, Bobby, we used to have him on the sunroof of the car, but it doesn't work. Unfortunately, it's not like we can actually pull up to a place. So I suppose to explain the logistics of it, which people may be curious about. So we're basically a catering company that we go under the guise of an Irish pub. So with that, we carry a liquor permit with our catering company. But of course, our Irish pub is kind of what we do and what we are. So we can't just roll up and start pouring pints at the side of the road. We have to be hired by somebody. So tonight we've been hired by somebody to be in their residence, and hired by wedding venues and different things like that. So it's all regulated by the state. So every month we have a list of all the places that we hit in the state. We submit that, and they verify it, and that's how we operate.
Are we crashing somebody's party tonight?
My wife's.
Is it a birthday or something? Is it a celebration?
It's a celebration of Barry Chandler.
Hey!
She's a patient woman.
Beyond that.
I only told her about 10 minutes ago. She had no idea who all these people were. Do you want to say hello, Marcy? No. Hold on, she's over there shaking her head.
It didn't take her long to get 300 people together, did it? 10 minutes. That's not bad going.
Yeah, there she is.
The little blonde one.
Give her away. The little blonde one.
And then the rest of the lads just put it out on Tinder. So it's amazing what happens.
Steve wants a tour of the pub. Show us that camera again. Give us a look at the big pub. The angle, different angle. Talk us through what we're seeing.
You may have to. Well, we're on a standalone camera. Can you move it? Or?
There's not much more to it. That's it.
That's it. That's the pub.
It's that small. So the bar out to the right is on a slide out. It's 12 foot. So the bartender actually stands in there, and the footprint of the bar is about 8 foot by 20 feet, where people are standing right now. So we've got that entire width and length of the trailer, and the bartender stands technically outside of the trailer in that slide out there.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then for bigger events like galas or banquets, we have an outdoor draft system outside where we'll put another bar outside, and we can obviously deal with the masses or higher volume stuff.
Right. I see there in the corner you have a man with a guitar around his neck. Does he just carry that everywhere, or is he actually a musician?
We actually leave him in the back of the truck all the time. We just drive around. He plays music. Our radio doesn't work. We can't afford one in the truck, so we just have Bobby play.
Before we go to the musician, Damien, tell me about New England Brewing Company.
Yeah, so this was a project I was delighted to to be involved with the Scully family and Pádraig, Colin, and all the crew. It was a great project. So this is the most recent one. So obviously we probably have discussed it. I was flat out pouring pints. So I don't know what you guys talked about earlier on, but this is one of the collaborations. And so it was a collaboration with New England Brewing Company. They're a very successful, busy brewery here in Woodbridge, Connecticut. We did 2 collaborations with them. The first one was with one of their IPAs, which is Fuzzy Cask IPA. And the second collaboration we did was with their Stout Trooper. So basically with the collaboration, what we did is we shipped them barrels and they seasoned the barrels with their Stout Trooper. Very interesting story on this particular one. You might notice you've got a stormtrooper with a Groucho Marx mask. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yep.
So they actually were sued by Lucas before he went to Disney for trademark infringement on that, and they won by putting a little pair of sunglasses and a mustache, Groucho Marx style, on top of it, and that's for Stout Trooper now. So great, the little guy winning against the big guy, which was always enamored by that story. But so we seasoned the barrels, sent them back to Ireland, and reintroduced Clonakilty. They did a nice blend, Paul Corbett over there did, and we left it sit there for about 9-10 weeks. I think it was about 12 weeks actually in the finish to get the right profile that Paul was looking for. And we were blessed. We shipped it back to Connecticut and we ramped it out, and it was off the shelves in about 9 days. Very successful launch, and just shows again people excited about Irish whiskey, and it's a nice partnership between a Connecticut brewery and a small Irish distillery, and just people will pay for quality, they'll enjoy it, and they get excited by it, and more importantly, they really appreciate it.
Brilliant. It's great to see so many collaborations now. That's the 3rd collaboration we've talked about tonight with Clonakilty, which is remarkable for such a young company, a new business that is going to the effort of making these partnerships and relationships. And it makes for great stories too, and opens up the audience in a big way, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It definitely connects them to, number one, their home, but on number one, they're home away from home. A lot of these are, their heart is based in Ireland, and it's a nice connection to them. It's a way of bringing both worlds together. So I think it's beautiful, and I hope they continue to do so.
It's brilliant. It's great stuff. Listen, thanks for bringing us into your mobile pub. It's people are fascinated with it. People can't believe it. Everyone's going to your website to figure out how to either build it or steal it from you or do something.
Okay, give me a second. I want to put a couple of Google ads on it. There we all hitting it. One day we'll be as big as Barry Chandler.
Just put a paywall on the site there, and then we'll put up the link.
We'll be having T-shirts soon.
Last name's like
turtlenecks. Maybe some turtlenecks.
There you go. No, but
we get a rambling turtleneck.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Barry. And we love what you're doing as well with all this stuff, introducing it, and God bless you, and keep it going, man. It's fantastic.
Cheers, Damien. I appreciate it. So look, we're just having the crack, talking to fellow Irish men and American men and women who enjoy the crack, enjoy the whiskey, enjoy Ireland, and life's for living and enjoying when we can.
That's it.
Have you a bit of music for us tonight?
We might have a tune or two. There's a very, very nice song that I'm very fond of. It's called The Parting Glass.
Oh, lovely.
And Bobby may have a couple, so I don't know how long people want to stay on, but we may have one or two if we're permitted.
You'd be permitted. Should we go to Bobby?
Roll it there, Roisin.
I found my love by the gasworks wall. Dreamed a dream by the old canal. I kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town. The clouds are drifting across the moon. Cats are prowling on the beach. You know, spring's a girl in the streets at night. Dirty old town, dirty old town. I heard a sigh saw a train, set the night on fire. I smelled a spring in the smoky wind. Dirty old town, dirty old town. I'm gonna make a good sharp axe, shining steel, tempered in the fire. We'll chop you down like an old dead tree. Dirty old town, dirty old town. I said I found my love by the gasless wall. Between the train by the old canal. I said I kissed my gal by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town. Dirty old town, dirty old town.
Good job, buddy.
You amazing. I don't know what we're experiencing here. We're right in the middle of a party. Here we go.
We're still going now. We're keeping on.
Oh, we're gonna keep going? One more. One more. Here we go. This is it. All right, glasses up.
There we go.
Oh, all the money ere I had, I spent it in good company. And all the harm I have ever done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Hold on, it's gonna be a while. Oh, all the comrades ere I had, they're sorry for me going away. And all the sweethearts ere I had, they wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls into my luck that I should rise and you should not, I gently rise and I softly call, good night and joy be with you all. If I had money enough to spend and leisure time to sit a while, there is a fair maid in this town who sorely has my heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks and ruby lips I own, she has my heart enthralled. So fill to me the parting glass, good night and joy be with you all. So fill to me the parting glass, good night and joy be with you all. Sláinte.
Brilliant stuff. Amazing. Amazing stuff with the Rambling Inn. We've crashed a party here, clearly, and we don't want to interrupt it. But you're doing great.
No, we're here. What's the next spot anywhere?
Jeez, you're having some crack.
Bobby, would you have one more left in your
Sure.
Barry Chandler?
One more.
Bobby, we've one more.
As I was going over the farm in Terrymount, I met with Captain Farrell and his bunny he was counting. First produced a pistol and I then pulled out my rifle. Say stand and deliver for you are a bold deceiver, but your rings of the news of the night. Back for the daddy-o, back for the daddy-o, there's whiskey in the jar. He counted out his money and just made a pretty penny. Put it in me pocket and I brought it home to Jenny. She saw it and she swore that she'd never deceive me. But devil take the women, for they never can be easy. But rings of the news of the night. Back for the daddy-o, back for the daddy-o. whiskey in the jar. I went into my chamber, all pausing a slumber. Drank the golden jewels and butter, was no wonder. Then he drew me charges, filled them up with water. Sent for Captain Farrell to be ready for the slaughter. Mushrooms of the doodle-da. I called Daddy-O, I called Daddy-O, there's whiskey in the jar. It was early in the morning, before I rose to travel. Comes a man to put mine, I likewise Captain Farrell. Then Bruce the pistol, for she stole him ring. But I couldn't shoot the water, so a prisoner I was taken. Mushrooms of the doodle-da. I called Daddy-O, I called Daddy-O, there's whiskey in the jar. If anyone can aid me, there's his brother in the army. If I can learn his station in Cork or in Killarney, I'd have to come and join me, we'll go roving in Kilkenny. I'll give you drink it better than McDonald's, fortune jelly, mushroom doodle-da. I called Daddy-O, I called Daddy-O, there's whiskey in the jar. Now some take the light, the carriages are rolling. Others take the light and the hurley and the bowling. But I did take the light and the juice and barley. 1 3 minutes in the morning, bright and early, mushroom doodle-da. I called Daddy-O, I called Daddy-O, there's whiskey in the jar. Mushroom doodle-da. I called Daddy-O, I called Daddy-O, there's whiskey in the jar.
Brilliant stuff. Come on, Bobby. Great stuff, Damien and Troy. That was brilliant. You sent us out with a bang. Right, listen. We're going to let the rambling in. Sing on. We are going to move. One more verse.
I'll eat when I'm hungry, I'll drink when I'm dry, and the moonshine don't fill me out until I die. I've been a moonshiner for many a year. I spent all me money on whiskey and beer. I'll go to some hollow, I'll sit on my AC. I'll make you a gallon for a pencilin bill. I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler, I'm a long way from home. And if you don't want me, you can be.
That's the rambling in. We're going to leave them party into the small hours of the night, and I've no doubt they will. My goodness, that's some setup that they have there. Unbelievable. Thanks to Damien and Troy in New Haven, Connecticut, for sharing the rambling in with us. Everybody wants a rambling in now, I can tell from the comments. Some crack. Unbelievable. I'd say we could keep the cameras on them till 2 o'clock in the morning and they wouldn't stop. I only wish we were there. Thanks again to Damien and to Troy. We are going to go for one final song. We've been going now for almost 3 hours. It's been an East Coast crawl. Up and down the East Coast we've been going. We've hit Maryland, we've hit D.C, we've hit Pennsylvania, Connecticut. Where else have we hit? All over. We were even over in Ireland for a bit. That was some energy in the pub, but we have been celebrating a few things. We've been celebrating Clonakilty whiskey, which we should be celebrating. And thanks to Clonakilty for bringing this together. It was an ambitious idea to do a crawl up the East Coast. I think it's been a remarkably enjoyable event, and I'm loving the comments coming in. If you've enjoyed this pub crawl, would you please let us know in the comments that you've had a good time? Give us a thumbs up or let us know what you've enjoyed the most so far. We're going to play out tonight we're going to go back to Patrick Marin in New York, who's going to give us a nice slow ballad to play us out. We've gone high energy with the rambling in. We're going to come back down for an old tear maybe in our glass, because isn't whiskey and tears, those two things are synonymous sometimes. But if you have enjoyed yourself, please let me know what you enjoyed. Thanks so much to everybody for tuning in. We will play out tonight on this amazing, first of its kind lock-in Clonakilty crawl up the East Coast. We'll be played out by the one and only Patrick Marin, who's going to come in now and give us one of his lovely ballads. Oh, wait, now we got to get him to unmute himself. Patrick, unmute yourself there. There
you
go.
are
Lovely
far
job.
too kind, Barry. You are far too kind.
Patrick, take it away, my friend.
I was figuring if I had to have a ballad in the back pocket, I wanted to have something by the Clancy brothers and Tommy Makem. So this is my rendition of their version of The Dutchman.
Beautiful.
The Dutchman's not the kind of man to keep his thumb jammed in the dam that holds his dreams in. But that's a secret only Margaret knows. When Amsterdam is golden, in the morning Margaret brings him breakfast. She believes him. He thinks that tulips bloom beneath the snow. He's mad as he can be, but Margaret only sees that sometimes. Sometimes she sees her unborn children in his eyes. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. Well, the Dutchman still wears wooden shoes, his cap and coat they're patched with love that Margaret's sewn in. Sometimes he thinks he's still in Rotterdam. He watches tugboats down canals, calls out to them when he thinks he knows the captain. Till Margaret comes to take him home again, through unforgiving streets that trip him though she holds his arm. Sometimes he thinks that he's alone and he calls her name. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. Well, the windmills swirl the winter in, she winds his muffler tighter, and they sit in the kitchen, and tea with whiskey keeps away the dew. He sees her for a moment, calls her name, she makes his bed up, humming some old love song. He learned it when the tune was very new. He hums a line or two, they hum together in the night. The Dutchman falls asleep, and Margaret blows the candle out. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. Let us go to the banks of the ocean, where the walls rise above the Zuider Zee. Long ago, I used to be a young man, and dear Margaret remembers that for me. Manchaba.
Unreal, a beautiful, fitting end to what has been a monumental night. A beautiful tune, sang masterfully. the Clancy brothers made that very famous. You have kept that living and introduced a new audience to it. A beautiful tune. I'm going to seek out more recordings of that. Beautiful, beautiful stuff, Patrick. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Patrick, you've been an absolute... Thank you for participating the whole night. Patrick Marin, our raconteur bon vivant from New York. We will see you in On the Rocks when the doors open again. Thank you so much for participating tonight. Thanks, Patrick. An incredible night, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. It took some pulling together to bring everyone to the table. We were so lucky with so many people who wanted to share stories and sips and be involved and just wave a flag for Ireland and for Irish whiskey. This flag waving will not end at the end of tonight's show. We're going to keep waving the flag for Ireland. We're going to keep sharing great whiskies. We're going to keep introducing you to more interesting whiskey companies, brands, distilleries, and indeed musicians and those who can tell stories and those from the world of Irish culture. We're going to find ways to bring more of them to you. So thank you as always for an amazing night and for the support that you've given. Every time we do this, I wonder how we're going to top it, not because of anything I've done, but rather because of the guests we've brought on. And each week, somehow, some way we manage to top the previous week. There's going to come a point where we can't top the week before it, but I must say we are ending on an absolute high tonight, and I'll sleep well tonight knowing we did a great job for Irish whiskey tonight. We had some fantastic musicians, thanks to Patrick, thanks to Kevin McCready, thanks to Cathal Armstrong, thanks to Anne, thanks to all of our guests tonight. If I haven't mentioned Paul Corbett, of course, our great head distiller in Clonakilty, and then Corey Mull from Manor Hill Brewing. Fantastic night. I had a lot of fun. It's almost like if I just set this up just for me to have a good Friday night and then I let you all watch, that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. But it really is a great time. So thank you so much. As always, my only ask of you on these events is that you share the live stream, that you click on the share button, you click on the like button, you tell your friends about it, you tell your family, you ask that they join in and join us here on a Friday night. There's nowhere else to be. And even if there is somewhere else to be, we're going to keep doing this to bring people together. So, Sláinte, I'm at the end of all of my Clonakilty whiskies, which is the perfect end to the night. I'll now crash in bed and fall asleep with some great memories of tonight. So thanks, everybody, for joining. It was a great night. Thank you for spending time with us, and we will see you next week on the live stream. We've got Talnua Distillery. Patrick Miller, the founder and distiller at Talnua in Colorado, is going to introduce us to single pot still whiskey the American way. And we're going to drink Redbreast 12-year-old alongside it. And we're going to hear how Patrick was inspired by single pot still in Ireland and inspired him to start his own distillery in Colorado. So a unique event and one of those rare moments where we bring American whiskey and Irish whiskey together. So tune in next week. Sláinte, everybody.